If y'all stand. And Janie Kelly. Okay, well, so Sammy, you want to pray instead?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and Lord, we thank you for all our many blessings. We thank you for this group that's gathered here this morning, and we just ask for your wisdom this morning over this meeting, that we may make the correct decisions for the city and further your kingdom. Lord, we just ask for rain and blessings upon the farmers and the people that need the rain this week. Flag, United States of America.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to move down to the consent agenda. The commission may request for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for presentation and public comment. Otherwise, the consent agenda will be considered in one vote. First thing is consideration of approving the April 17th, 2017 Planning Commission regular meeting minutes. And then B is the final plat of the Ellison Estate Section 7A, a request for approval of final plat of the Ellison Estate Section 7A on an unaddressed tract generally located north of Rimrock Circle and Willow Circle, and being 8.246 acres out of the north half of Deaf and Dumb Asylum Land Survey number 8279 and the south half of A.E. White Survey number 1, abstract number 3944, Tom Green County, Texas. And then we've got the last C, final plat of Ellison Estate, Section 7B, a request for approval of final plat of Ellison Estate, Section 7B on an unaddressed tract generally located north of Rimrock Circle and Willow Circle, and being 5.030 acres out of the south half of the A.E. White Survey number 1, abstract 3944, Tom Green County, Texas. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Joe made the motion. Terry seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have 6 of us. 6-0. All right, we're going to move to the regular agenda. Subdivision plats. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. A is the final plat of Prestonwood Addition, Section 6. Public hearing and consideration of request for approval of a final plat of Prestonwood Addition, Section 6, on unaddressed tracts generally located west of Willoughby Down and Huntley Drive and west of Pinion Ridge Drive and Huntley Drive, more specifically being 5.773 acres out of the south half of the Deaf and Dumb Asylum, Survey number 2, abstract 8211, Tom Green County, Texas.
Morning, Commissioners. Jeff Fisher, Senior Planner with the City of San Angelo. Okay, so our first case on the regular agenda today is actually 2 combined. The final plat of Section 5 and Section 6 of the Prestonwood Addition. This land was recently annexed into the city last month. Section 6 is 5.773 acres, and Section 7 in blue is 10.910 acres west of Huntley Drive, SMD number 6 in the Bonham neighborhood. So this was the governing preliminary plat, which was approved by you all on October 15th, 2007. The original Prestonwood plat included all of this area, as you see on the screen, 243 single-family lots and 30 zero-lot line homes. It comprised of 76.5 acres in total. So the areas here, again, in blue is Section 7, and in red is Section 6. Section 6 will be 19 new single-family lots, and Section 7 will be 43 new single-family lots. So staff looked at the governing preliminary plat. As you know, one of the reviews that we do is in the subdivision ordinance is to determine general conformity. The final plat should generally conform to the preliminary plat. So first we looked at Section 6, and we noticed a few discrepancies that we wanted to point out. So the north portion on the original preliminary plat had Willoughby Drive extending all the way through lots 35 and 25. In the proposed final plat submitted, Willoughby Drive would essentially dead end and would not have through access. That's going to limit one of the access points. So that was one difference. Secondly, the additional lots here would increase the overall acreage by 1.29 acres So they've increased the lot area as well for the single-family lot. So we believe that that's not generally consistent with the plan as it was submitted. The southerly portion is exactly as presented, so no issues with the southerly portion in Section 6. Section 7, they've reduced the lot total by 1, and also they've added a street in here, Trippington Way, which was not shown on the preliminary plat. So for that reason, we believe at this point it does not appear to generally conform. So our rationale is to recommend denial as submitted, even though the plat overall meets the general intent statements. It does not generally conform to the configuration of the preliminary plat. The additional 1.29 acres was not part of the governing preliminary plat for Section 6, and then you have the dead ending of Willoughby Way. And then for Section 7, you have the reduction in lot yield as well as the addition of a new street that wasn't shown. So staff recommendation is to deny both final plats for not generally conforming to the governing preliminary plat as per Section 53A3 of the Land Development and Subdivision Ordinance. So your options today essentially have four options. One is you can make the determination that it does generally conform, even though they've added the extra lots in the street, to the preliminary plat, and you can approve the final plat as submitted, and then we go forward. Two is, as you did with, I believe it was Lakeshore Estates, you can repeal the preliminary plat, or excuse me, Bentwood, and you can approve the final plat. This would require a new public hearing, though, because as submitted, it still doesn't conform. The third option is they can submit a revised preliminary plat. That would be consistent with the final plat configuration, so they could add Trippington Way and show the additional lots on the preliminary plat. Again, we'd have to come back next month. Or four, they could submit a revised final plat consistent with the preliminary plat. So leave the preliminary plat as it is and just revise the final plat accordingly. So those are your four choices. Any questions or comments at this point?
Any questions for Jeff?
Jeff, I know you've already said this. When was the preliminary plat originally granted?
2007.
2007. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're good. Public comment?
Good morning, Russell with SKG. We would like to ask that you determine that this plat does meet the general conformity requirements and approve them both as presented. We do have a small extension of property west of Wilkie. We're extending Wilkie to the extent of the property that we own, and we're putting a cul-de-sac there. That's not a permanent dead end. If the landowner to the west of there wishes to develop that property, they're certainly able to tie on to Wilkie and continue that extension. Rocky Templin, the owner of this property, just purchased that piece of land when he bought some other land to the west of this property to kind of finish out this area. And I don't know, Jeff, do you have like an overall aerial image of this area, maybe a Google map or something? Okay, thanks. So you see to the west of Wilkie is the Boulevard apartment complex. They went in there here recently, but certainly sometime after 2007 when we did the preliminary plat with the plans that Wilkie would just kind of continue projecting west. So they go in there. There's a drainage easement between their property and the property that Mr. Templin owns, so it becomes fairly easily evident that Wilkie most likely will not continue westward in the future. And so the developer, envisioning and planning for the future, added then in Section 7 the Trippington Way, which would be which moves us south and puts us in an alignment toward go south of this drainage easement here. So Trippington Way would come in here and would continue going westward. And so we believe it works with what the developer wants to do. So we ask you to approve these plats and save a lot of additional work and additional burden on both the city and the developer to go and redo and wind up back here with what we would hope that staff would approve today. And this kind of leads to a further discussion about what general conformance definition is. And we've talked to staff about that, and, you know, they've run some numbers, you know, is a lot makeup within 3% or 10%, or so long as they still meet the intent of the RS1 zoning, then they should conform. So I don't know if this is a great venue for that, but at some point in time, we may need to look at what this general conformance definition is, because it's vague and puts us at odds at time where we'd like to be able to have a definition, a better definition, so that we can be clear on that. So be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Russell?
Yeah, I have one. So, off the top of your head, when do you feel like you started this process?
For section 6 and 7,
When they originally came to you guys with the idea and you started, how long ago was it?
2005 or 6, I believe.
And so, and correct me if I'm not hearing this right, we're basically, if we don't approve this, which to me, I mean, I'm going to make the motion to approve it, I'm going to tell you. And the reason why is, and one of my colleagues already said it, it's you know, we've got to have some common sense, right? And I can't possibly see putting this off any further for not dotting an I or not crossing a T or making basically inadvertently very small mistakes on maybe some of the paperwork, right? And
I think it's just things from 2007 till now has changed.
Sure.
I mean, so it's not like y'all just came up with this. It's the fact of things changed around you, so you had to adapt to what that was. So, and Rocky, for those of you that don't know him, he's sitting out there, but he's been a builder around here for a very long time and has done many subdivisions. So this isn't his first rodeo. I mean, he does what he says he'll do.
I'm going to second his motion too.
Okay, let's
When-
wait,
I haven't-
let's
I
wait,
haven't
wait,
made
let's
it
do public.
When it
Okay,
comes
so hold your horse.
Yeah, I know, but when you do, I'm going to.
Okay, any more questions for Russell? Okay, any more public comment? Okay.
Say if you-
So, I'm sorry.
If you hear the 4 options again, if you do decide to approve, the conditions would follow on the next slides.
Okay, very good. And we had those in our report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, so when we make the motion, we do have to make a motion separately for section 6 and then for section 7. So let's, if you're, does anybody have any more questions?
Can I add just one
Yeah,
thing?
you betcha.
While we're supportive generally of this plat as it's shown, there's a procedural issue, and if you all find that this is generally conforming, it is sort of in a gray area where I think it could go either way. I just wanted to point out that the solution could have been for them to submit a revised preliminary plat showing exactly what they've shown. It could have come actually at this same meeting. In effect, that would essentially be photocopying the plat you have before you, calling that an amendment to the preliminary plat, and that would have dotted the i's and crossed the t's. Again, we're not here to
Right.
make them
No.
jump through extra hoops,
Right.
but there was a fairly simple solution that we
So
discussed
why
with
wasn't that
them.
done?
The applicant chose not to do that and
Okay.
proceed this way instead.
Are there any significant changes to the subdivision ordinance that would bear on a revision to the preliminary plat?
No, it would have been recommended for approval, and again,
Okay.
While on the one hand it is one extra hoop, it is a hoop that's adopted in the ordinance by the city council, and so we're hesitant. You all have the authority to basically overrule it, but I'll just tell you from our standpoint, we're a little hesitant to say something is conforming with the number of changes that were in it.
Okay.
And it's, you know, the application fee of $400 or $500 and some time, it could have been $1,000 impact to the developer, and then however many hours of city time towards
Right.
that. So
Right.
our thought was this could accomplish that same
I understand. Thank you, Russell.
All right, Is any other public comment? Okay, there being none, let's have a motion on section 6 first.
Commissioner, Chairwoman, just before you make the, if you do decide to, as I say, to move forward with the approval, will be subject, each plat had 6 conditions of approval, so you'd want to state that into the record,
Okay.
subject to the 6 conditions of approval. And you'd have to have 2 motions because there's 2 plats, so
Okay.
2 separate motions.
No problem.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
so go for it, Joe.
You want to put would you put the
Yeah, will you put
conditions
the
on there,
conditions
please?
up? We have to read all of them?
No, you can just say,
Have to reference
yeah, you just need to
okay.
reference it.
the general list.
Okay, so I want to move to approve the section 6 with,
6 conditions?
yeah, with the 6 conditions, yes.
Second.
Okay, we have, okay, so Joe made the motion, Sammy wait. Okay,
Just on one, right?
the first one,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So determine that the final plat generally conforms to the preliminary plat and approve the final plat as submitted
With the six-
with
And
the 6
subject to-
conditions.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Okay, so I have a first by Joe and I have a second by Sammy.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that went 6-0. Now let's go for the section 7. All right,
I'll do this one.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah. For section 7, I'd like to determine that the final plat generally conforms to the preliminary plat and approve the final plat as submitted with the 6 conditions.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Joe will second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, we got 6-0 on that one. All right, we're moving down to C, the final plat of Hosher Farm Estates, Section 1. Public hearing and consideration of request for approval for a final plat for Hosher Farm Estates, Section 1, in the variance from Chapter 10, Section 3B, construction standards and specifications to allow for a 2-course surface treatment for all internal streets and no header curb instead of hot mix asphalt with a header curb for all streets on an unaddressed tract generally located south of the intersection of County Club Road and Hilton Head Boulevard in the city of San Angelo's extraterritorial jurisdiction, more specifically being 18.624 acres out of the D-Dam Survey Number 170, Abstract Number 131, and that certain 40.79 acres tract described and recorded in the instrument number 201612647, Exhibit 7, Tract 7, Official Public Records, Tom Green County, Texas.
Okay, so this is the Holscher Farm Estates, Section 1. Earlier this year, you all had approved the preliminary plat for this subdivision, which includes all of the dark yellow lines. The Section 1 now is 18.624 acres in the light yellow lines at this point. Just a quick summary of the previous approval. Two of the conditions were that a revised preliminary plat drawing was submitted showing a 60-foot right-of-way and Hilton Head Boulevard as a collector to match our thoroughfare plan. That's been done and been signed by the Directors of Planning and Engineering Services as well as the Chair of the Planning Commission. So we're good to go now forward with the final plat. So again, 18.624 acres south of Country Club and Hilton Head Boulevard. It's in the ETJ, so there's no zoning. This was the governing preliminary plat you all approved December of 2016. Was 103.288 acres for 81 single-family lots. Today it will be 14 lots for single-family homes. Please note the FAA Vortex site here. This is the proposed final plat, Section 1. So we just wanted to bring this to your attention. We are going forward with a recommendation of approval for this plat because staff believes it does meet the criteria in the subdivision ordinance. However, as a separate matter, as a note, we wanted to advise you that the city airport had expressed concerns of the approving this plat due to the southerly 2 lots being within the vortex radius when the essentially when the airplanes come in. I understand it acts as detection. They're requesting an aeronautical study by the FAA. As I understand, that has not been done at this point. So we just wanted you to note that that's a private discussion taking place between the city airport and the FAA. Staff recommendation is to approve this final plat. to deny variance. They've requested a variance from asphalt surface to two-course treatment. We are recommending denial of that for the criteria, which we'll go over in a minute, to all internal streets with no header curb. And we're requiring that all streets be constructed using the required hot mix asphalt with header curb. So our rationale, approval of the plat, it conforms to the city's comprehensive plan. It's designated neighborhood that allows single-family housing. It also conforms with the intent of pertinent statements. Nothing ambiguous about the lot configurations. They match exactly what was approved on the preliminary plat, so it does generally conform there. However, staff is recommending denial of the variance for the lower paving standard. We had talked to our senior city engineer about this, and the first criteria for a variance is it going to be detrimental to public safety? Well, if you have, my understanding from him is if you have two-course material, it can lead quicker to deterioration. It's not the high standard that the city uses. Secondly, we believe that it's not a unique situation. Even other roads inside the ETJ area use the asphalt surface, the higher standard. And the higher standard is really the minimum standard. That's what the city uses across the board. So we believe that it could lead to deterioration as per the opinion of our city engineer on that. Three is no hardship is created. There's nothing topographical about the land that would hinder paving to asphalt construction. And four, it would not vary any other city ordinances. It would reduce public safety. You'd have an area that would essentially be paved to a lower standard. So staff recommendation is to approve the final plat, but deny a variance to allow for a two-course surface treatment for all internal streets. So again, Country Club Road, which comes along the top, would be paved to asphalt, as I understand. It's just the internal streets that would be to a lesser standard. And require that all streets be constructed using the required hot mix asphalt with header curbs. Any questions or comments?
Any questions for Jeff?
Is there any plans for the future annexation of this area? Do you have any idea?
My understanding is it is in the 0 to 5 year range, so it's coming up for review, but it doesn't necessarily it'll be annexed.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one, well, really two. The first, can you answer a question about the airport situation, or is that? I just want to know why they feel like they're going to be losing access to that runway. I don't.
Yeah, I can address that. If there's too much encroachment within, if there's really any encroachment within that circle, in fact, when they brought in some heavy equipment to start grading the site, the FAA shut down that vortex site. If too much development happens within that area, it could interfere with the operation of that site, resulting in them having to shut it down again. That would, in turn, affect the operations not only at the airport, it's also a regional vortex that helps guide planes to other surrounding airports like Abilene. And so that's the concern.
It looks like it just barely does it, but it does.
With the changes, though, within the FAA, some of the vortex in different areas, they are, making them, they're not using them anymore. So with their study, they may do something different with this one, too. They've changed the guidance and everything with those.
And it's for that reason that you see this second bullet here that the airport director is requesting as a condition of approval, if you approve it, that they don't move forward with filing the plat until the aeronautical study has been completed.
And that will be them and their condition for that, not us, right? It is
We
ours.
need to add the condition,
No, it
if
would-
we approve it,
if
that
you
the study's required.
Now, again, depending on how long that study might take, if you add that as a condition, you could be delaying the development of this property.
Right, that's, yeah.
Right.
Can we put a
that
timeline on that
little
it has to be done by a certain time? Because you leave that out arbitrary, it could take forever.
It seems to me,
I know.
John, and look, I may be wrong, right? But it seems to me like we're doing this backwards, right? Shouldn't we be here After they have this meeting and the FAA
FAA's,
signs off
yeah,
on
after
it?
the FAA's come to
Because
an
then you
agreement on
guys
what
could
to
have
do.
came back and said, hey, we've already met with the FAA. They said this thing is golden, so now here's the rest of it. So now we're making a decision, and then we'll have to come back and make another decision based on what their decision is. So it just seems like we should have been last.
I think ideally that's the way it would have worked. I think the developer in this case is ready to move forward, and those issues have not been addressed.
Okay.
And they've chosen not to address those. Now, I will say, as you noted, this barely clips these two lots in this portion of the subdivision. I think we would be more adamant about pursuing that if it were this, and I can't draw on this screen, but if it were this area where it overlaps 8 or 10 lots.
Right.
I think we would have more of a concern that that FAA study had not been done.
Okay.
Because it's just a little bitty bit.
And as I understand it, that circular area is part of an agreement with the underlying property owner. And so there is, the way we look at it from the subdivision ordinance standpoint is that's a private arrangement. That circular area is effectively leased from that underlying property owner. So if the FAA has significant enough concerns, they could pursue civil action against those properties if homes are built where they shouldn't be, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Jeff? Okay, let's have public comment, please.
Good morning, Russell with SKG. The discussion on the VORTAC, you're right, Mr. James. It is a private matter, not a city matter. We realize the airport, this impacts the airport and its operations, but we see it similar to any other easement that may be on a piece of property, that it's between the servient and subservient property owners. This effectively would, on the city's behalf, would be a condemnation without compensation if you just effectively require this, or even this aeronautical study that could be extremely cumbersome and expensive for this. The two lots that we're talking about are still buildable. There is a small clip of that comes across from that arc, so they just stay out of that, not build in it. If they opt to, then whoever owns the lot at the time, this arc and easement will be on the plat, or will be on any title commitment, so they'll be fully aware of what is on there, just like any other easement that would come about. We're in the process of doing a survey of this VORTAC for the Bureau of Land Management, because they're the land management arm for the FAA, and so they're in the process of negotiating all the terms for pretty much a perpetual lease of this VORTAC site. There's some landowners over here. He has a big old metal barn right there, and at that location, they've pulled that easement radius back to 670 feet. So 750 feet is not the bare minimum. They pulled it back where his existing barn is to 670 feet. So, and it's a conical projection sloping up, and so as you move away from the center point, the height and restrictions move up. So we just ask, we're aware of the issue. We just ask that it really becomes a non-issue with respect to the platting and allow us to move forward. It does kind of bring up some discussions that could lead into any future development and how we talk about Hilton Head and Ratliff Road. If this is effectively a perpetual easement and there's this great concern about the implications of equipment or machinery or traffic, the master thoroughfare plan that shows roads going through there most likely aren't going to happen. So when the city did its study of the master thoroughfare plan, they just totally left out the ramifications of that VORTAC site sitting there, which really could be a changer for what we do with those streets. We'll put them in because that's what the master thoroughfare plan showed, but maybe sometime in the future, as the city's kind of a little more aware of the implications and what this VORTAC site does, they may want to revisit their master thoroughfare plan. And really how it impacts us today is Hilton Head, and it's slated to be a collector, a rural collector street, which is for width, for the rural version is not any different than what a local rural street is. So we're not too worried about the width of it, but there may be some thickness and construction implications that require thicker base, thicker asphalt that really would be a burden to the developer when at the end of the day it's not gonna really happen. The nature of it is really gonna be with the size of the tracks is not an intense development with a lot of feeder roads and more growing through there. So Hilton Head, really with this perpetual lease pending on the Vortex site is not going to continue through. So we ask that you kind of, we have that discussion about the street itself, and then going back, kind of changing now over to the street construction and the request for the variance on the pavement improvements. The developer is purposefully has not asked for annexation. They, based on their market analysis and what they feel the market niche is that they want to meet is not one that you're in the city limits. They feel like they have people who want to not be burdened by city regulations, city taxes, but here we are at a city meeting talking about it. It's because of the memo of understanding between the city and the county for subdevelopments in the ETJ. So, you know, there's been discussions back and forth. There was most developers effectively avoid development in the ETJ because of the additional financial burden that's tied to having improved streets up to city spec. So we effectively have this vacuum of development that doesn't occur in the ETJ. The Holshers are kind of broke that vacuum with this development that's a fresh development from scratch. We've done some infill that are on existing roads. You know, y'all have heard those and reviewed those. So that's why we're asking for the variance from the hot mix. The county approves, and the county standards are for the two-core surface treatment. So those county roads are certainly safe for public travel. There's not a higher maintenance cost to the taxpayers because these roads are not in the city limits. They're not a burden of the taxpayers. In the county, when you do a development, the county does not accept maintenance of those roadways within that after a year of the construction being complete, as the city does. That you have to go and make requests and even pay the county a maintenance fee, if you will, for the future maintenance of that roadway at some point in the future. So there's really not a financial impact to the taxpayers for allowing this variance to from the asphalt requirements. Now, we propose to do the subgrade and base per city spec. If for some reason they could ever get this area annexed, and from my understanding, if there would ever be an annex pursuit on this, they would have a big fight on their hands effectively because people would bought and be living out there purposefully not to be in the city limits. So for this to be annexed into the city is a ways stretch out there. So be happy to answer any questions.
So what are the other roads out there? What are they made of? The other streets out there?
Like the development north
Yeah.
of Country Club Road?
Is that all asphalt?
All of that is built to city standards. Everything that you see to the north of this property, all in the city limits, all of it has been built. Almost all of it. I'm sure there are sections of it have been built to city standards.
If it's in the city limits.
All of that to
Yeah,
the north is in
right.
the city limits.
Okay, it's in the city limits.
Yes.
So any that is not in the city limits, what is the normal construction of the roads?
Be a county spec two-core
county spec.
surface treatment.
Which is what this is?
That's what we're proposing. It's kind of a hybrid between city and county to get the subgrade and base at least to the city spec level, because you can easily come back and overlay in the future the two-core surface treatment with an asphalt overlay, and then you effectively have a city spec street in there. So that's kind of like, okay, we're going there, we're making an effort, we can do a little bit to get us to where all we have to do is come in, or the city comes in, if they can ever get it annexed, and put the icing on the cake, if you want to say that, because the structure is there intact. The stuff to the north, it's not built to current city spec. I do not believe that there's a concrete ribbon curb there, and the base that was built prior to the current specifications and standards. So to say that they're to current specs, I would seriously doubt that they are.
Russell, I have a question for you. So I think I understood Jeff to say that Hilton Head and one other street would be asphalt. Is that correct? When it coming across there?
Well,
That lines up.
they wish them all to be asphalt.
No, I know, but I thought there was, that's why I'm asking you.
My understanding was the variance request is just for the internal streets. So Country Club, which connects to the north part of the subdivision, would be asphalt, but their variance would be the internal streets that go down from
Hilton
there.
Head would be a variant street.
Correct.
Correct. So Country
Okay.
Club Road, the city rebuilt that some time back and put the concrete curb, and they did that with asphalt. So that's a city-maintained street.
Right.
So we feel that we should, at least for a city-maintained street, build it to the city standard. So we would be widening our incremental half and putting the concrete ribbon on Country Club Road. So we're
Okay.
not asking for a
Thank you.
variance for that one.
Okay, I didn't know which streets he was referring to, or needed to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Any other
questions?
questions for Russell? All right.
I'm sorry, Russell, I do have one more question. I'm assuming that the city has different requirements for collector streets versus, I guess, a standard residential street. Is that correct?
Yes, they do.
And has Hilton Head been labeled as a collector street within the preliminary plat?
It's not a function of a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat doesn't necessarily dictate the street classifications. We have adequate right-of-way. We have 60-foot right-of-way so for rural, 60-foot is required for both collector and local. And so that's intact, that's there. What we get into would be the thickness of the base below that, and even if we get depending on which way the variance goes on the pavement, the surface may change too. So we would ask for the consideration of Hilton Head being effectively being able to be built to a local road because of the vortex site and the potential.
And when I look at this map and see the vortex site in the middle of where Hilton Head would likely go, long range, I don't know why we wouldn't try to change the classification of the road systems for this subdivision so that it's accurate for future development.
Yes, correct.
And that was our recommendation as the preliminary plat was reviewed, is that shifting that over to the street to the left,
Yeah.
so that would become the collector.
Okay.
Now, that might result in changes. Instead of cul-de-sacing at the end, it might have to continue
Right.
through.
When you say to the left, moving it over to this?
Yes.
Or the next one, either.
And, if we move it over to the next one, we still have conflict with the vortex site. So, I think if we at least can not make it a requirement here because we know for sure, then in the future we can deal with it going forward, and maybe we need to get the MPO involved in reevaluating the master thoroughfare plan through here, so we can come back to you with a good guidance on where that should go.
Okay. Thanks, Russell.
Any other questions for Russell? Okay, other public comment?
Lance Overstreet, Assistant City Engineer with Engineering Services. And to give you guys a perspective on what's going on with the Vortex site, there's a fair amount of grade change across the site. So I'm going to kind of just draw out so you can kind of see what's going on. So the site kind of generally has an angle here, and I believe the vortex is kind of located like here. And then, as Mr. Gully said, it has kind of a conical shape as far as the radar of how that goes up. And so depending on where the housing and depending on where the roadways are, really depends on whether or not it gets into that kind of conical area there as far as the vortex. And so the overall design or where that roadway is, collector or whatever, it's available to be moved and get it out of that vortex site. And so that's also, too, why some of the equipment, when it got into certain areas, was more of an impact than other areas. And then also, too, why there could be restrictions on some of those lots as far as a single-level lot versus a two-story lot, things like that, to stay out of that vortex area of the radar, just to kind of give you guys that education. Jeff, do we happen to have a view of an aerial that shows some of the stuff to the north at all? So if you guys have been out in this area, you're familiar that Country Club Lane is kind of the dividing line between what's city and what's county. Country Club Lane is actually, for the most part in this area, it is in the city limit. The city does maintain it. You will see that there is a header curb on the one side. Engineering and planning has allowed what's being developed by the Holshers to be classified as rural because of the size of the lots and the whole motif that they're wanting to go with. The difference in rural and urban has to do with the pavement widths, whether it has stand-up curbs or whether it has a header curb, and then whether there's a small bar ditch on the side or not. And so all of that differs between what is an urban road and what is considered to be a rural road. And so we have allowed them to keep the rural road aspect of it. We are, though, really pushing to try to make sure that it is developed to a city standard. And the reason for that is, if you recall or have heard, Country Club Estates, which was annexed in, none of that was built to any of the city standards, right across the street from this whole area. And we are constantly dealing with problems in that area because of the conditions of the road, because of the way the road was actually constructed. And the reality of it is we pretty much have to tell all those residents there's nothing the city can do at this time unless you can get council to approve millions of dollars to come through and reconstruct those roadways to bring them up to a standard that will help you out in your situation. And so we thought that trying to do a rural road and maintain a city standard is really going to be in the best interest of the city because it is abutting directly to the city limit. I know a lot of people, may not want to be in the city limit, but there is, when you're selling larger lots, larger homes, there's going to be a level of service that individuals are going to want to have. And the first time the fire in one of those areas happens and the city fire trucks can't go into it because it's rural, people may want to have a change. And that's something that we see, the whole idea of annexation. And what is currently kind of the arrangement between the city and the county is that if something has the potential within the next 5 to 10 years to be annexed in, the county has asked us to incorporate and extend that stuff into the ETJ to make sure there is some consistency of development standards. So, any questions?
Have any questions for Lance? Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name's Steve Holscher. I'm the owner of the property. And yes, I know there's some concerns on the VOR. I'm here to answer any questions. But yes, that VOR is definitely a homeland security issue. That thing, it takes all the airplanes from east to west and north to south. That thing will probably never go away. It will be there permanently. It's perpetual. And it's an issue that we have been self-policing on. Like I said, we had one contractor accidentally parked a truck there that it reflected off of that VOR. And in essence, I heard it was shut down, I heard it wasn't shut down, but it did shut down four IFR landings that were coming in, and they weren't critical, they were just coming in as schooling. And so under that, we wanted to make sure that was corrective action taken. So everything is being set up with the FAA. I've had a lot of meetings with them, me and my family. We've addressed all the situation and all of their concerns. All brand new contracts are being drawn up right now. And that inside that VOR radius, a single landowner, one of my sisters owns all that. That was specifically done so none of that would be changed. It would all stay under one ownership. And yes, to the left-hand side here, that VR does encroach on that one road that could be a feeder road. But I do not ever see where there can ever be a road put through there, because if a truck was to accidentally get stranded because of a mechanical failure, it could shut that thing down ineffectively. Is there any questions on that VOR?
No, sounds like you've been dealing with them, so
Well,
you're
yes,
well aware
and
of
they're
it.
very easy to deal with. We've dealt with them since the 50s, so that's been a 60 to 70 year arrangement. And we've had a lot of on-site meetings with them and evaluations, and so everything there will be straightened out for sure. On the road coming in Hilton Head, that was addressed to be basically a main feeder road coming in, and that's why it needed to be upgraded to a higher status of concrete curbing and asphalt mix. I don't see that happening, and the reason why is because of that VOR. And as far as the quality of road and what the city is asking for, that's quite a bit more expense. I do understand that, and it is a better road, yes. There's a lot of roads in the county. I drive them every day, going out to the farmland country, and they're not hot mix. They're turquoise gravel and asphalt mix, and that's what the county standard is. I've talked to the county commissioners. They're acceptable with the way the road is going to be built. And as far as being a public hindrance or anything that could cause public harm to the public, I don't see that, because the maintenance issue would probably be the only thing, the longevity of it. And if the road is built right with the base underneath, I don't see that to be a problem. So with that, that's why I'm requesting a variance to be a two-course gravel asphalt mix.
Any more questions for Mr. Holscher?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have one for Russell. Russell, what is the average longevity, if you will, on a maintenance of this two-step process? Do you have any idea?
The city and the county both are, I believe, kind of on a 7 to 10 year cycle for going and overlaying those. So with an asphalt road, you lay it down, and maybe within 7 to 10 years you need to come in and overlay it with, and most of theirs, so long as they're structurally intact, their maintenance program is the chip seal that they place over them. A lot of the issues that you're seeing are base failures or subgrade failures. Back through the years, the city used to allow caliche on the roads, and not really closely policed and thickness and checking the subgrade, because the quality of the subgrade can impact the structural carrying capacity of the street as well. And so that's why you see some of the streets in failure. So with a good base and subgrade preparation intact, then really it just comes down to a maintenance in a 7-10 year cycle of a chip seal will sustain that street very, very well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, well, sort of. So if you have, because we've heard two different sides, right? And basically we've heard two different opinions. You have on the city side, they're saying that the county has recommended uniformity, okay? But then you have the county saying that they are okay with the way that road is going to be built, right? So to me, if the county is wanting uniformity in all these roads, then it seems like they need to change their standards to match the city standards if the expectation is those roads are going to have to be like the cities, right? So I don't see how
So why don't
we're
they do
going to. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's a good question.
I just
Why
don't
they-
see that you have completely different standards. So either city and county get together and go, hey, this needs to be the new standard for the ETJ, or we're just going to have to do what makes sense, and that is if the county is approving of what they're doing, then that's the county's business, that's the county's decision. That's my opinion.
Let me clarify
Go
that
ahead,
last
sure.
point. In this case, it's not the county's decision. The county has ceded authority to us within the ETJ. The ETJ is defined as the area the state law says that we can and likely will annex at some point in the future. And so within the ETJ, it's the city's authority to define what the street standards are. It happens to currently be in the county, but in terms of the ETJ, it is the city's authority, and the city council has determined what they want the streets to be like within the ETJ.
Wouldn't it make more sense, though, if the county did work with you on that? If this is a new street, it seems like if the county would not say that it's acceptable and that you need to defer to the city, it would make it easier than the fact of that the owner gets told one thing from the county and then the city says something else. That to me could be very conflicting.
And I think the county has worked with us in the past, and there's been agreement on previous similar subdivisions.
This doesn't happen all the time.
In effect, the county has agreed that the city standards would apply because we have an interlocal agreement pursuant to state law that we're required to have for the ETJ. And our subdivision ordinance applies, and along with that goes the authority for the streets. Also, with respect to this particular annexation, there are no subdivision. There are no building permits. That this issue with the FAA could be regulated through building permits, and that is, it shows up on the plat. It's a safety issue, and there could be standards that would be required. The FAA has notified the city that what could be constructed in there, a lot of it has to do with the materials, the height, the location, the size. They would have to inspect building plans and approve them. We don't have the authority for that now, but there is some consideration about annexation. So if that were a major factor, and that's still under consideration between the city and the FAA, there may be a need to do an annexation just for the building permits. So it is an issue about the streets in this subdivision that may not be as much of an issue in other areas of the ETJ.
Okay.
The way I see this, there are really two arguments here, two points to consider. One, I think the classification of the road bears consideration because the cost of what's being done to the base is going to be different if it's a collector street versus a regular old residential road. And then obviously the other is the cost difference between a two-course surface treatment and an asphalt pavement system that the city's recommending. So I'd love to have some, if someone could share some thoughts on what we're really talking about cost-wise, I think it might help us make this decision.
I don't think we're supposed to take cost into consideration. I think that's one of our rules, right?
Okay.
I think is that right? Cost cannot be considered.
Sorry, what was that last
Isn't it
question?
cost cannot be considered?
Not for a variance, no.
Is the base different?
That's fine.
I wanted to know about that too, so.
Yeah.
so-
I think we would be comfortable, though, if you approved this with the I don't know if it's a condition or a partial approval of the variance, to call, given the vortex site, to call that a local street rather than a collector. Again, we would still recommend that it be built to city local street standards, but I think we would be comfortable with not requiring it to the collector level standard, but only the local
Be a
street
local
standard.
I have one caveat with all due respect, if that's all right. With the direction to staff to re-examine the major thoroughfare plan, to move that collector to one of the other streets, so that you still have that northwest collector, and you haven't eliminated it altogether.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's a good point.
The base we're proposing for the subgrade in the base, the main structure of the street, we're proposing to construct it to city spec.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just
I
that
thought
top.
the base was the same on both of them.
Yes.
There is a slight difference between city and county spec on base. But we're proposing to construct the subgrade and base to city specification. Because that's where you get into the major reconstruction costs, is when you're have to go in there and tear out the base that was put down, tear out subgrade, reprocess, new base. That's the big expense. That's the $1 million that Mr. Overstreet was speaking about. But just to come in and overlay it, you get in there and you put a 2-core surface treatment on there, and then in 7 years you put another surface treatment on there, so you just keep that maintenance going over that. And the VORTAC issue, to us, it should be a non-issue because that's a private property matter. If someone wants to go and build a structure within that little bit of arc of an easement, then that individual needs to go deal with the FAA, and they'll have the rules in place, and they can do it. Doesn't need to be policed by the city or the planning staff or really the developer. Here's your requirements. Here's your lot.
It is recorded.
Yes.
The easement is recorded, so it's going to be picked up.
Absolutely. There's going to be a recorded easement. When the title company does their stuff, it's going to show it, and just like any other easement would show up on there.
So could someone tell me what the difference is in base prep for a local street versus a collector street? Is there a significant difference in materials or?
No, there isn't. The base prep is the same. It's just the width.
Okay, the width is the only difference.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion.
It depend. In the rural, I'd have to verify on the rural side. I believe on the city side, it might be a slightly thicker. Instead of 8 inches of base, you may have 10 inches of base.
Okay.
But we're not talking a considerable amount.
Okay.
I would have to verify on the rural side.
Lance,
of
it does help the fact that they're going to make this up, as far as the base is going to be up to city standards. That does help, right?
It would. The other difference in the city and the county is the actual ribbon curb, is what we call a ribbon curb, that's along the side that prevents that unraveling of the asphalt on the edge. That is another key thing that's the difference between the county and the city specifications as well.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
I think somebody else wanted to speak. Okay, are we done with public comment? Or did Mr. Hosher? Okay, if you'll just state your name again, please, sir.
Steve Holscher, owner. If you look around at the surrounding area, streets, whether it's Ben Ficklin, those are chip seal basically, and asphalt, gravel mix. Those streets and Ratliff Road, they've been there 50, 60 years. And those are all just 2-course asphalt and gravel seal. And the base there was sufficient. Those roads are not coming apart 60, 70 years later. In that particular area where we are, we have really good base, and that ground doesn't shift like it does down on the river bottom in the Country Club Lake Estates area. That's 10, 15 foot of topsoil, and when it cracks and it destroys everything. So where we are, the soil type makes a lot of difference on building a house or the roads as far as the subgrade and the subbase going in. But in that area, we've had a Clichy that built all the roads. It built all Country Club Road. It built Ratliff Road. It built Ben Ficklin Road to the river. And that was done back in the 40s and the 50s when that area developed. So there is good base out there. And on those areas, those roads just don't self-destruct until you get down into those river bottoms. And that's not apples to apples, that's apples to oranges. It's 2 different types of soil.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hosher. Jeff, did you have something else?
Let me just add, it sounds like we're getting into a debate on what the appropriate construction of roads is. So I just want to remind you that the city council has established a standard for what those roads would be built to. Your question today is their situation unique enough from everywhere else that they should be granted a variance from the requirement that city council has already adopted?
Okay, very good.
My motion.
Anybody having more questions before Terry makes a motion? No. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, I would like to approve the plat and approve the variance also, please.
Second.
Okay, so Terry made the motion. Sammy, did you second it?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With the 3 conditions of approval.
Okay, let's look at those 3 conditions again.
Okay, so with
the-
Terry making the motion,
With the three conditions.
do we have to make a motion separately for the FAA thing, or is the FAA
No,
thing
that's
part of
private
this?
Make
matter.
it as part of the motion, so you can either say
Okay.
that you don't want to add that as a note, you don't want to add that as a condition. That's the first part.
Have to
And then
strike
the
number
major,
two.
the direction to staff in terms of the street, because remember, they don't want to build it as a collector. And so you're going to need to go on the record and tell staff that they can go ahead and build it to a rural, local standard.
We're going to start over with my.
Yes, let's do
Okay. We are going to approve the plat. We're going to approve the variance. Strike number 2 on your summary of approval conditions. And. Okay, well, that is, I mean, we are approving the variant, or I would like to approve the variance. And, see, the FAA thing to me is the private matter between them that's going to be recorded. So it will be recorded as stated. I don't know.
Is that enough?
And then do you want to change the status, the classification of Hilton Head Boulevard to a,
So part of your motion is that that be, that the base, as they noted, would be constructed to a rural, local
Yes.
rather than rural collector?
Correct. With the two-step.
Anything else Terry needs to add before she finishes her motion? Rebecca, anything else she needs to add? Does that take care of it? Okay,
Now,
Terry's
Sammy?
done. Now do we have a second?
I second.
Sammy will now second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. I
Okay, so we
oppose.
have a 5-1. All right, moving on to second replat of Lot 19, Block 2, Lakeshore Estates. Public hearing and consideration of request for approval of a second replat of Lot 19, Block 2, Lakeshore Estates, and a variance from Chapter 9-5 exempting the requirement for a sidewalk for public safety on an unaddressed tract generally located at the northeast corner of Knickerbocker Road and Lakeshore Boulevard, being 4.972 acres out of the south part of Lot 19, 6.251 acres, Block 2, Lakeshore Estates, Tom Green County, Texas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the second replat of Lot 19, Block 2 in Lakeshore Estates. It's on 4.972 acres, Knickerbocker and Lakeshore Boulevard, and SMD number 1 of the Nasworthy neighborhood. The applicant has requested a variance from the planning director's requirement for a sidewalk along Knickerbocker and along Lakeshore under Chapter 9-5. So this remained as a remnant portion of the lot to the north, and so now they're coming in with proposed development, commercial development here, which would then trigger platting. So that's where we're at today. The proposed final plat, you have it, it's 4.972 acres. The requirement for a sidewalk here, and we'll go over the rationale in a minute. This whole area in the immediate vicinity from Mary Lee Park across the road where the plat area is part of Harbor Village. That's an area of Lake Nasworthy that's going to be a future site for hotels and restaurants. It's going to generate a lot of traffic. We believe it's also going to generate a lot of pedestrian movement. And so the request for a sidewalk here, this is approximately 700 feet of area here. So it's sort of like we do with other plats. If we miss the opportunity now and they come in here with development and development here, there'd be a 700-foot gap without a sidewalk. So that's our essentially our intent for that. Staff recommendation is to approve the final plat and deny the variance to exempt the construction of sidewalks along Knickerbocker and Lakeshore. Go over briefly the rationale. So for approval of the plat, neighborhood center designation in the city's comprehensive plan, that supports a wide range of commercial uses. The underlying zoning is CG, so it will meet the comprehensive plan in terms of conformity there. The intent of purpose statements in the zoning ordinance, proper block layout would guide future development. It's right along Knickerbocker, so that would extend the commercial corridor, would be an orderly development of land. So we believe it meets the purpose statements in terms of the plat. But we are recommending denial of a variance from sidewalk construction. We believe that a sidewalk would be important for public safety, as mentioned, given that this will be the future site of Harbor Village. Also, again, with the vacant commercial land to the south and north. Without proving a sidewalk, it could be about a 700-foot gap. We don't believe it's unique in this case. No topographical issues that engineering and planning had looked at. Would not vary any other provisions. We believe that it would. The intent statements are clear that orderly, safe, and efficient development is important. Not having a sidewalk could lead to concern there, especially with vehicular traffic along that corridor. Staff recommendation is to approve the final plat, but to deny the variance to exempt the construction of a sidewalk or sidewalks along Knickerbocker Road and Lakeshore Boulevard, subject to the 3 conditions of approval in your staff report. Any questions or comments?
Could you put up the map again of the aerial? So I just wanted to bring home one thing that Jeff said. There was a study that was done. We paid for it. The city paid about $300,000 for the Lake Nasworthy corridor study. And they identified this area, a little bit further and a little bit south, as Harbor Village. So even though, regardless of how this site ends up ever developing, regardless of what it is, and today the plat isn't dependent on how this thing is going to develop. It's dependent on what the zoning is, the future land use, and what that study has dictated for this area. Harbor Village is an area where we see a lot of retail coming in, a lot of commercial coming in. And today there's a lot of pedestrian movement. You all have seen it on Knickerbocker, folks, but bicycling, walking in this entire area. If there's one area that staff feels sidewalks are necessary and are needed, and where the study, the Lake Nasworthy study, has identified where sidewalks are needed, is this area. So we just wanted to make sure that you understood why it was that we were so adamant about sidewalks in this particular area, because of the study and because of how those 2 roads function today, particularly Knickerbocker.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, any questions for Jeff before we get public comment? All right, public comment. You might as well get you a chair.
It's a great morning, isn't it?
Please state your name.
Yeah, go ahead and state your name again.
Russell with SKG.
We're just gonna get him a name tag.
The Harbor Village should build their own sidewalks when they come in and generate all of this traffic that they generate when they come in. When is Harbor Village coming in? It was a $300,000 study, beautiful study, $300,000 that should have been spent building sidewalks. That really told the city what a lot of private developers should do on public land. And, if they go in there and close down this park area, how many people are going to be displaced? The main thing we look at when we talk about sidewalks is desire paths, and is that area currently being used with pedestrian traffic? And there's none out there. There's no visual evidence of pedestrian movement up and down Knickerbocker and Lakeshore. And when this great Harbor Village comes in, they should deal with the pedestrian traffic that they are going to generate on their side of Knickerbocker, because they're going to be the great traffic generator, and they should deal with that. But to require a developer who's not going to profit anything from this Harbor Village going in there, really, if it ever goes in, is really not fair to that developer, not equitable. So really just concerned about that. That the Section 9 or Chapter 9, Section 5 of the subdivision ordinance under sidewalks really speaks about that. It talks about when they're required. In this heavy pedestrian traffic, I just really question this. When this Harbor Village, they had great plans for what the old power plant was going to be, and now Glen Meadow owns that and is using that differently. So we just really struggle with requiring a sidewalk in a place where there's no traffic, pedestrian traffic that's coming through there. So be happy to answer any questions.
Is this going to be for retail?
They're proposing to place a storage facility there. which really kind of, and I didn't want to go into what they're proposing there because it's just the zoning will allow the usage and the platting doesn't really dictate that. Because staff always says, well, we could get it platted and then they could come in and do
Right, they could change it.
they could
yeah.
change it, but the property that is under contract, as soon as this kind of plat is approved, then their intent is to move forward with the closing of it and begin the storage units. And I don't see a storage unit facility generating any pedestrian traffic, carrying your sofa on your shoulder headed to your storage unit. Don't see many of those, so appreciate.
Any questions for Russell?
Thank you.
Okay.
Visualization.
Any other public comment? Come on up, Todd.
Hi, my name's Todd Cawthorn. I'm with Scott Allison Real Estate, and I do have that piece of property under contract. I've also had some other property closer to the airport. They were talking about putting hotels and stuff in. I had it for 10 years. Charlie Coons had it. When they were building all these hotels in town, I didn't get a call on it. I haven't had anybody that wanted to put a hotel out there. And everybody's wanting stuff on the loop.
Any questions for Todd? Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Mr. Jones.
Hello, I'm Tony Jones. I'm a developer in town, also built a few houses. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I'd like to speak globally about the cost in San Angelo and how it goes up exponentially by such requirements as this. You're asking a developer to go in there and put sidewalks down, spend the money, lay the money out, and then sit there. And that money is spent and gone forever for that developer. The people that come in and buy this piece of property may or may not, and probably would not, benefit from these sidewalks. You know, staff for years, through, I guess, education in our universities these days, comes to us, and they have a utopian idea about how San Angelo ought to look, you know, and what would be ideal, you know, beautiful street lamps, sidewalks, parks, and all of these things, but we have to measure as a city, as a staff, as a council, as this august board, we have to measure what the benefits are versus the cost. And we can't, San Angelo cannot simply afford sidewalks everywhere staff wants them. Up to staff, we would sidewalk every inch of every street in San Angelo, Texas. And so, in a situation like this, there's no defined need. There's a defined want. And so, for you to require a developer to do that it adds to the problem San Angelo has. We're a blue-collar town. We're going to always be a blue-collar town. Oil field's going to come and go. We'll have a lot of money one year, and the next year we won't have any. And one of the things that we do, San Angelo, staff, council, is we spend a lot of money when we have it, and then we're stuck with keeping this stuff up. One thing to remember about sidewalks, particularly in residential streets, they want us to put them in, and then we have to hand it off to the homeowners for them to keep up for years to come. It's up to a homeowner, and in this case, a developer, to maintain those sidewalks. And if the city goes out there and sees a crack and want that developer or that homeowner to replace that sidewalk, they've got to do it. In other states, if people can't afford to have their sidewalks fixed, then the city can file a lien on their property. And so there goes the snowball down the hill that we don't see today. And so that's all I have.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, any more public comment? There being none, let's have a motion.
I would like to, well, let's see if.
Oh, do you want to put that? Yeah, put it back.
Yeah, let's put all the directions up there so I'll know what to say. I would like to approve the final plat. I would like to approve the variance away from the sidewalks. And
Second that.
Subject to the conditions.
Let me see the conditions, please, Jeff. Make sure I don't want to strike any of those.
Strike two.
So strike two will be removed from that, and that's my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so Terry made the motion, Mark seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0. Very good. All right, so we're down to rezoning. City Council has final authority for approval of rezonings. A, Z 17-03 Ostrander, public hearing and consideration of request for approval of a zone change from the general commercial, heavy commercial zoning district to heavy commercial zoning district for property located at 1604 South Bryant Boulevard, generally located at the southeast corner of South Bryant and West Avenue L, more specifically being .583 acres in the Park Heights Addition, Block 59 being the east 19.25 feet of Lot 1, and all of Lots 2, 3, and 4, City of San Angelo, Texas.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. This case is Z1703 Ostrander, 0.583 acres at 1604 South Bryant Boulevard. It's at the southeast corner of South Bryant Boulevard and West Avenue L in Harry Thomas's district of the Fort Concho neighborhood. So the future land use, that should be commercial, is what it stands right now, and the zoning is general commercial, heavy commercial, CGCH. The applicant's proposing today's request for a zone change to heavy commercial CH, so it'd go from CGCH to CH. These are the photos of the surrounding area. So you've got Joe's Italian Restaurant and the hotel to the west. Further north is Santa Fe Furniture, just past the site. South is Financial Insurance Loan Company, and east is Super 8 Motel. So this is a predominantly retail commercial corridor, not a heavy commercial one. The current site is an auto detailing window detailing center with a budget truck rental. This is looking at the subject property. So what the reason for the applicant's request, and they're here to answer any questions later, essentially at this point is not to bring in a heavy commercial use. The purpose of the request is to allow a billboard, an off-premise sign. In this CGCH corridor, council from 14th Street down to Montecito along Bryant prohibited any billboard signs. Billboards are only allowed in these corridors if you're zoned CH, ML, or MH. And so the purpose would be CH. So when staff were about to provide our rationale for this case, we had to look at two factors. One, is CH appropriate for this commercial corridor? Because if it isn't just going to be the billboard, it could be heavy commercial uses that could also come in. And two, is a billboard, an off-premise sign, appropriate for this area as well? So we looked at both. These are the two existing billboards that are within 500 feet of the subject property. So there's that large billboard in front of Joe's Restaurant, and then 1601 South Bryant North. There's one just above here where the U-Haul trailers used to be. The sign regulation says there's certain setbacks as well if you're within 500 feet. On the same side of the street. So in theory, they won't have to meet that setback for the Joe's sign, but they will for the sign, which is just past here. There should be sufficient room on the lot, but again, our argument is whether a billboard is appropriate or not. Staff is recommending denial of the CH zoning, and also for the following reasons. The comprehensive plan policies make it clear the commercial designation talks about providing an adequate transition. You've got residential development to the east. You've got retail commercial on both sides of this corridor. Bringing in one heavy commercial site would not be compatible and would not provide a transition, staff believes. Second, we don't believe it would be consistent with the zoning ordinance either. The intent of purpose statements for for CH zoning talks about predominantly retail commercial uses in the CG. So the heavy commercial would be bringing in, even though it allows some retail, it's predominantly heavy commercial uses. Third, it's not compatible with the surrounding area. As mentioned, you've got a mix of hotels, restaurants, and offices. CH, even though it says heavy commercial, it's really more of an industrial type of zoning. So we also looked at the sign ordinance for off-premise signs. So this map here provides a good indicator. All of the red areas here which could be zoned CGCH, would allow a billboard sign. But this corridor between Montecito and 14th Street does not allow them. And the intent was, when council passed the sign ordinance, was to basically regulate and keep for public safety, and also to ensure visual clutter aspect as well, that there wasn't too many of these types of signs. The other concern is a billboard sign is larger than a freestanding sign, so they could go up to 300 to 500 square feet as opposed to a maximum of 250. Some of these signs could be flashing or change. So with the 2 signs that were already allowed, the reason those 2 other billboards were there is because those properties were zoned ML. They were previously industrial zoning before our comp plan came in, so they're basically grandfathered in that respect. This would be bringing a new sign, and you'd have a whole bunch of, you could set off a bad precedent. So that's our logic. Our rationale for denial of the CH zoning, we don't believe there's changed conditions here. This area has been retail commercial for several decades. There wouldn't be an effect on the natural environment per se. The site's already paved. The community need, we don't believe, is justified. Approving a CH zoning for one development, one site, would not outweigh the benefits for protecting the neighborhood as retail commercial. And finally, the development patterns, we believe, would be inconsistent with the retail nature of the area. Again, you've got one small site of heavy commercial in a sea of retail commercial, and the neighborhood to the east. 11 notices were mailed out. We have not received any responses at this time in favor or in opposition. So staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning from the general commercial, heavy commercial CGCH zone to the heavy commercial CH zoning district. And instead, we recommend a rezoning to general commercial CG. The general commercial would protect the 2 existing uses on the site, the window tinting and the budget truck rental. Both would be allowed in the CG as well, and the CG would be more consistent than the existing CGCH, and of course not the CH. Any questions or comments?
Jeff, what would be the most intensive use if it went heavy commercial for that lot?
Most intense could be industrial service. That could allow storage and some minor repair and fabrication of heavy commercial uses. So it wouldn't allow manufacturing, but it could allow some light fabrication and some other intense industrial storage and equipment.
Thanks, sir. Public comment?
Good morning, Russell with SKG again. The property is currently zoned CGCH, and if you look at the use table, for what's allowed and compare a CGCH into a CH, there's really not much difference there. And I can either read every one of them, or I can kind of scan through them, but
I don't think that's necessary. Is a billboard allowed in CGCH?
no, and that's really the crux of why we're here.
Okay.
If the property when the zoning ordinance was created, there was this C2 designation that we used to have, and you had a mixed use of general commercial and heavy commercial within those areas, and so it's now a CGCH, but you can't ask for a CGCH zoning anymore, and you have to change. So in a CH zoning, we could put the billboard, but really there's very minimal things that would change from what you're allowed to use between a CGCH and a CG or CH zoning. We certainly want to implore, and I don't know if we can even be against a zone change. If you don't approve this, we hope you do approve it to a CH, but we're adverse to a zone change to a CG. We would rather just leave the property as the CGCH zoning, because you would actually be downgrading the uses on that property. So we really want to pull the CG zoning off the table and work towards what the CH zoning would allow us to do. This is such a small piece of property. If you look at potentially worst case scenario, of what someone in a CH, if it goes to a CH zoning, what someone could do in there, it's so small, there's not going to come in there and do what the most intense thing above, and I could try to find what it would be between a CGCH and the CH zoning, come in there and do. So really, there is a need. Otherwise, we wouldn't necessarily be here. It's called San Angelo's hunger for Chick-fil-A is kind of what initiated this, and so Chick-fil-A is asking for wanting a billboard somewhere along this corridor to point people down Knickerbocker in that little corner of, you know, the great restaurant quadrangle that we have there that's just evolved. And so really that's the need. Mr. Cooper with the billboard companies here, he can present to you kind of a great case on how aesthetically this is going to work. You know, driving up and down Bryant, Abe, Coingheim, 87, whichever version, wherever you are along there, visual clutter, that's kind of the intent. That's what how that corridor functions. Y'all drive up and down it all the time. There's business signs, there's off-site signage, there's roadway signs. So I think Mr. Cooper is going to present to you kind of a proposed concept that would net out a neutral change with respect to visual appeal in that area. So I want to introduce Doug, and then but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I think we're good. I mean, we understand. Other public comment? Oh, that's fine. You betcha.
Good.
If you'll state your name for us, please, sir.
Doug Cooper. I'm the owner of Southwest Outdoor Advertising. Okay.
Since you're so tall, you might
know,
move that
I
up
am
a
super
little
tall.
bit. There you go. Was like at your waist.
Now I sound weird with this. Okay. All right. So everybody has that. And okay. So once again, my name's Doug Cooper. I own a small business called Southwest Outdoor Advertising. So I've been a part of San Angelo for 10 years now. Got full-time employees here, office here, pay lots of property taxes, and thousands of dollars a month to local property owners in ground rent. And I think that's important to point out right now. So local businesses must advertise here in San Angelo, not only to stay competitive, but really to stay in business. My company provides a cost-effective means to advertise through our billboards. There's TV, there's radio, and there's newspaper, but most small businesses simply can't afford TV ads, radio ads, and newspaper ads are pretty much obsolete at this point. Not to mention the fact that none of those advertising mediums really does very good for companies such as Chick-fil-A, where they need to see their billboard, and they need people to see a billboard, make a decision, and act right then and there. Or any of the hotels that we have in town that people from out of town passing through need to see that billboard ad and rent a room. So a lot of times billboards are not only the most cost-effective means for small businesses to advertise, but in most cases, it's the only way for them to advertise. So this is really what brings us here and why I'm requesting this zone change. So last fall, Rob Watkins, the local Chick-fil-A owner, called me and he said he really needed a billboard to advertise his new restaurant that he was opening on Knickerbocker. He said he needed a billboard around South Bryant and Knickerbocker to direct people down that are driving on South Bryant to turn down Knickerbocker to get to this new location he was building. And sure, there's other billboards in the area on South Bryant, but those aren't billboards you can actually advertise on in terms of a permanent billboard. Those are called they're called poster panels, and the other company here in town, Lamar, has them, and they're on a rotary program. So you can't just rent that one and stay on it. They rotate throughout the city, okay? So that really didn't work for Rob at all. So he needed a billboard, obviously, or he called me. He's been a client for years. He called me. He said we need a permanent billboard. They're called perms. So I told him I'd see what I could do, but I did know that there was some antiquated language in terms of these not being able to build a billboard north of San Jacinto Street along South Bryant. So this brings us to the Tuffshine location, the property we're talking about today. Paul Ostrander, who's back there, and his wife own this property. And so the Tuffshine property actually meets and exceeds not only the TxDOT strict rules and regulations for a billboard sign, but the city of San Angelo's billboard ordinance as well, except for this language that I previously referred to about not being able to build a billboard north of San Jacinto. So Paul's property is currently zoned CGCH, which allows for billboards in other areas of town. It's more than 500 foot away from any other billboards. TxDOT only calls for 300 foot spacing. It's located more than 100 foot from any residential district, and it meets all city setback rules, okay? So with that said, Paul and his wife agreed to allow my company to build a small 10 by 30, which is 300 square foot billboard sign on their property. So they could obviously create new revenue from their property, earn a little extra money every year. Additionally, I told them that I would remove their existing 24-inch by roughly 30-foot tall signpost, and you guys have that in your handout, a picture of that, from their property. So I'll be removing this big old pole that sits there right now, that's there, you can drive by and see it. So I went ahead and applied for and got approved for a TxDOT building permit to build an off-site sign, and that approval is in y'all's handout. So obviously knowing that it'd be unethical and pretty much bad business to just simply apply for a zone change without giving you guys a reason, I scheduled a meeting with Al Torres with Permits and Inspections, which they've all been fantastic to work with over the years. Rebecca and John with planning. So during the meeting, I told them exactly what was going on, what needed to happen, just everything I'm telling you now. And that there was a legitimate need for an off-site sign here, but that the site actually met all the rules and regulations, city and state, minus the street cutoff rule. So, so it was a good meeting. We put our heads together, tried to figure out a way to put a billboard here. There was no other location in the area. In terms of, there's ML and MH right next to this property that do allow for billboards, but it didn't meet any of the spacing requirements, okay? So John and Rebecca told me the sign variance, for some reason, is not an option here, which left us with either getting a text amendment to the sign code or to simply apply for a zone change to allow for an off-site sign. So here we are. This billboard's not big. In fact, it's one of the smallest billboards that people build in Texas, which is 300 square foot. Most billboards that y'all see, I think in the presentation that just saying that there was a large billboard in front of down the street. Well, so one of the billboards down the street is 672 square foot, okay? So this billboard is less than half of that, the one that I'm proposing. And that's all that CH actually allows for is a 300 square foot sign, okay? So you'll probably remember a similar and very recent zone change request for a property located on 306 in order to build a billboard from back in December, okay? Same thing here. So the petitioner that y'all saw on December 19th case was Mr. Holvik. What you didn't see was that the true petitioner for the billboard company was a Houston company called Signad, which is actually the largest privately owned billboard company in Texas. So Signad petitioned to do the exact same thing that I'm trying to do today, to get a zone changed in order to build an off-site sign in an area that otherwise meets and exceeds all city and state rules. And seeing that a sign variance was not an option for them either, this is what they were left with, to get a zone change for the property. So in the sign zone change request back in December, the Signad zone change request in December, the zoning district that the property was currently in was not even eligible to allow for an off-site sign. It was currently zone CO, which has never allowed for any off-site signs anywhere in the city, anywhere in the sign ordinance. The Ostrander's property, the Tuffshine property on the other hand, is currently zone CGCH, which does allow for off-site signs, except for the street cutoff rule. And furthermore, the request from December 19th, the sign ad request, was not just to allow for a new billboard, but they were planning to put a digital billboard there nonetheless. So my request is simply to allow for a regular, static, non-digital billboard. So the big difference here is that the city planners actually recommended approval for the sign ad zone change request to allow for a billboard sign. This is perplexing, obviously, to me. The planners did write, however, that you can see on page 4 of the highlighted area of the staff report that I provided you all, that it should be clear that the billboard use of the property should be a mere afterthought of the primary use of an office or retail. Well, sign ad, outdoor advertising, now owns the property, which means the primary use of the property will be for a billboard. So regardless of this, my zone change request was recommended for denial, but sign ads was recommended for approval. So just to recap a little bit, a company that has no employees here, I know, well, I got are y'all getting bored yet?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I apologize. I apologize. Okay. Point is their request got recommended for approval. Mine's getting ready for. They don't have any. I'm a local company, regardless. So this South Bryant, this Side Bryant corridor, it's commercial. There's signs. That's part of the fabric of a commercial corridor. Businesses must advertise to stay in business. You know, and here's the thing. If approved, this is really going to be a net zero. I'm removing a 24-inch column by 30-foot tall pole and replacing it with a 24-inch column. Anyways, so really all I have, you know, at the end of the day, you got two local companies. You got Southwest Outdoor, Chick-fil-A. Just trying to get a little help from this committee. This is the only option that we were offered, is a zone change, because a sign variance wasn't an option. So I appreciate your time, and I apologize.
Do we have any
Spoke
questions?
too long.
No,
It'll be
that's
a
fine.
single
I think
pole
we're-
billboard,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, it's a single pole. 24-inch column. So just double-sided, back to back. So that's
No
Good,
questions.
thank you, sir.
okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, there being none, Mr. James is making his public comment.
From the podium.
Just wanted to make one thing clear. He mentioned that it meets all city standards except the street cutoff. Well, we think the street cutoff is important. And as you can see from this map, the red areas, the city council, when they adopted the sign ordinance, basically said there are generally two areas we want to see billboards and everywhere else we don't want to see billboards. One is in these red corridors, which are basically highway corridors external to the core of the city. The other area were industrial and heavy commercial areas. Regardless of how we rezone this and what the surrounding zoning is, if you drive through this area, to me, it's clearly a retail area, not a heavy commercial or industrial area. The difference with the sign that was out here that he referenced that we recommended approval, it is on one of those red corridors, and that was a large part of our recommendation, if you recall, that it being in an area where billboards are generally allowed, we were supportive of the rezoning to allow that. Again, the city council has designated this core of the city as an area that, under the sign ordinance, they prefer generally not to see new billboards. Again, this isn't about what staff wants. Our job is to bring to you a recommendation based on the past policy and ordinance recommendations that come from the city council.
There's something else I'd like to clear up as well. We know that there's a restriction within this corridor that's the city council passed years ago. Is there not a distance requirement for billboards as well on the same side of the road?
There
And What
is.
is that distance?
It's 500 feet, as you
500
mentioned.
feet.
and
Okay, there's a railroad track just north of this location. How far is that billboard from this site?
Where they're planning to place the billboard, it's a
Yes.
little over 500 feet away.
Okay.
It fits on the site.
Okay.
Will this, if we allow the zone change, does it also go before city council?
It does.
Okay.
Yes, yours is a recommendation to the city council.
Thanks, sir.
Russell with SKG. Mr. James said, the council said we don't want to see billboards in this area, that they wanted billboards in specific areas. If we had the right zoning, if we were in the ML zoning or if we were already a CH zoning, we could have a billboard here. So there's not a no billboard straight from council decision here. It's kind of a conditional approval. We meet setbacks. We're 500 feet. TxDOT's 300 feet, as Mr. Cooper alluded to. So really, we would like you guys to approve this, and if there's some question about it, it has to go to council. Let's let council kind of get for what they get the big bucks for here on the decision making. So irregardless, we would like you to approve the zone change and send it up to city council, and we'll work through it there. So thank you for your time.
All right, any other questions?
Make a motion to approve the zone change.
So Sammy made the motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Mark seconded it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have Joe and Travis with nays. That's a 5-2. I mean 4-2, sorry. 4-2. Can't count. Okay, going down. BZ 1704 Woodfin, public hearing and consideration of a request for an approval of a zone change from the single-family residence zoning district to the manufactured housing subdivision zoning district for property located at 2101 Mark Street, generally located at the northwest corner of Mark Street and East 21st Street, more specifically being .344 acres in lots 1 and 2, block 23, Marks and Plum addition.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services, and I realized the last time I stood up I didn't say that, so hopefully we'll remember that for the record. This is an area zoned for single-family homes, and again, back to the future land use of the area is neighborhood. The zoning is RS1 single-family. Again, a little background on the ordinance that the City Council has adopted that does not allow manufactured homes within RS1 zoning. Their policy direction through the ordinance was basically that manufactured homes should only be allowed in areas of manufactured homes, either in a manufactured home park, where you have a number of manufactured homes on a single property, or a manufactured home subdivision, where a subdivision of multiple lots has manufactured homes. What's being requested here is basically a single lot. It's technically 2 lots, but they're owned jointly, so we treat that as if it's 1 lot. Seeking to go to the manufactured home zoning for 1 lot in the rest of, surrounded by a single-family neighborhood. This is the existing photo of the property. There is an existing non-conforming mobile home on the site. As you know, with non-conforming uses, the intent is that they go away over time, that a mobile home that goes away should be replaced with a single-family home that is consistent with the zoning of the property. And this is just looking around the neighborhood. You can see other single-family homes in the area. There are some newer construction homes, so vacant lots or rebuilds within the neighborhood have been built as new single-family homes rather than manufactured homes. The rationale for approval, the zoning is not consistent with those council directions through the ordinance that, again, limits manufactured homes to certain areas. Not consistent with those policies of the manufactured home subdivision zoning district, which is in the intent statements talks about multiple lots being rezoned to create an area for manufactured homes rather than at one individual lot with a manufactured home. That zone change was, or the zoning ordinance was updated in the year 2000 to address this particular issue. As you may know, in some cities, manufactured homes, mobile homes, are allowed within single-family neighborhoods just like any other home. We had a similar discussion when we talked about the industrial homes, the modular homes. And in general, those are allowed in single-family areas, but you all recommended changes to our ordinance to have some specific requirements for those. This is similar. State law allows us to treat manufactured homes differently than single-family homes. And what the city council has done is to do that, is require manufactured homes to be separated from neighborhoods. You can see here, this map just shows the subject property there in the center. It also shows homes built since 2011. So again, this is an area where new single-family homes are being built. It also shows the 3 existing non-conforming mobile home or manufactured homes in the area. So there are others in the area, but again, those are older manufactured homes that are not consistent with the current zoning, and at least without a rezoning, if those went away, they would have to be replaced by a regular single-family home. We did send our notices to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any in favor or in opposition. Staff does recommend denial of the rezoning for basically zoning one piece of property differently from the surrounding neighborhood. We believe in contravention to the City Council's policy guidance on where manufactured homes should be allowed. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No, sir. Thank you. Any public comment?
So I have a very rapid-fire presentation. I'd hope you allow me the opportunity to not have to stand in front of a microphone.
It has to be on record.
Okay, well, can
If
you
you'll
turn it
state
up,
your
or can you
name.
give me a lavalier or something to walk around? Okay.
I don't think that,
You don't put my pictures up. Those pictures are terrible. These screens are too small. I don't need that. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, but you're not going to help me here.
Could you state your name, please?
Excuse me. My name is Jim Bean. I'm here to help a gentleman that owns this property. And primarily, you have a situation that basically manufactured housing now is not your grandfather's mobile home. People have in their mind the belief that manufactured housing is a substandard product. And there seems to be something by interpretation by the local planning group.
Excuse me 1 minute. Where did our screens go?
Did I turn this off? Did I get it when I turned that off? Hey, dinner. I'm not going to have anything on the screen.
there we go.
But I don't think you have an understanding of the environment, the neighborhood, and what the planning department's word choice, that word intent, there's a lot of ambiguous word choice and interpretation that doesn't speak to facts. And that's kind of what my primary object is going to be. But it has more to do with education and understanding of the area we're talking about. You can't tell anything from these pictures. I'm going to just jump around here a little bit. The new homes they're talking about are built to a standard less than the home product I'm talking about, a manufactured home. If you look at it, it's 5 or 6 years old. It's not maintained, and the reality is it's probably rental property. But there's always this vague business about the materials of a manufactured home are inferior. You're talking about a 2000 ordinance change. Today is 17, excuse me. Technology has outdistanced some of the ordinances that are out here, but there's not a conflict in the ordinances. And there's not a specific statement in the ordinances that says shall not be in an S1 neighborhood. It's still an S1 home. It's just a definition or another word choice you're using for the same thing. The city's ordinances have equated mobile homes with manufactured housings for whatever reason. They're not the same. The mobile home facility, I'm going to show you, very quickly, I want to hand you some prints over here of the manufactured housing project we're talking about. I'm just going to hand them over to you. You look at them while I'm talking, please, and then just chunk them on the ground over there. Is that okay? There's also a few close-up images of these rental properties I'm talking about. rental properties I'm talking about. If you will look at those, I put some designation on them, kind of takes stronger than I am. To show you the lack of conformity, the inconsistent, and being in real estate, you're going to look at these homes and you're going to see that they are fabricated with just bare bones materials. Just, there's always a question that comes up, several myths, and that's what they are, myths, and that's what I'm here to disprove. There's I forgot what it's called on the side of a trailer house, the flashing or whatever you want to call it down there.
Hurting.
There's this comment about, oh, it's got this flashing on it. It doesn't look good for the neighborhood. You're going to see one or two of these homes that have a simple facade of fake stone only on one plane. And you're going to see where it's the windows are put together by someone that built a house such as myself. And then you're going to look at this, which I'm going to hand these to you, and I'm going to get out of the way. Some of these pictures, which I've forgotten are in here, it's the wrong pile, just a second. Boy, that is strong tape.
That's.
What's up with this?
I'd appreciate if you would also.
Is that you?
I would appreciate also if you would look into these images and look at the quality of the materials. You know, we say siding is inferior in these products. The viewpoint of planning. Planning, if I haven't already stated this, said this is the only way this gentleman could enjoy success to have his property upgraded. You probably don't care that it's his homestead. You don't probably care that she's been there forever. But hardy board is hardy board. They don't make 3 grades of hardy board for siding and things. You're going to see that the elements in this home, proposed home to bring in here, is high end. These are not images of any manufactured home. This is the actual product we're talking about bringing into this economically depressed neighborhood.
You have the outside pictures? We don't usually get to look at the inside pictures. Ours are the outside.
Yeah, we don't
look at the
have anything to
inside.
do with what somebody does inside a home.
Here's the outside. Wish I'd have known that. Here's the outside.
Oh, just a door.
Talking about quality. I was not made aware of several things from planning. I requested some older planning maps. I was told I was given access to all of the planning graphics. I found out that there are some graphics relating to zoning on their intranet, and those were not made available to me. I'm going to request those later. Let me get these out of the way.
Pretty good photography.
Well, I can kind of hang with those guys up there. That's a shame. Well, we'll change directions, and I'm going to hand you primarily exteriors of the environment. I'm just going to tell you, these homes we're talking about here are really within a block radius of this target product. It's not something I went out and cherry-picked to reinforce what's going on.
Back side or the front side?
A lot of pictures.
It looks like refrigerators.
Why are they here?
So he could show you the neighborhood.
This solution is very simple. It's a very simple situation. The gentleman wants to upgrade his living standards. He wants to bring into his property, which you can see, I'm not going to use the word manipulation, but the gentleman previously, let me get some water for this. Some of us take blood pressure medication. I'm kind of thirsty. Planning just told you that it's a two, and I'm just talking about the rules and inconsistencies in my viewpoint. They just told you that it's really a two-lot property. The guy happens to own both of the lots, happens to be on a corner, and if it shows in that picture over there, you're going to see that the city hadn't even made good on their curbing that they promised this guy over many years, but that's another story. Planning told you it was 2 lots, tangent, but they decided for their own reasons to define that as 1 lot, which I kind of think's a little bit out there, but I'm going to try to touch on a few things from the comments that city planning made. Basically, the planning situation has a lot of vague wordage in there, and that word intent comes around a lot. And we're trying to read into some ambiguously worded ordinances that were enacted in 2000. Not picking on that because we know it's hard to write any kind of rules. But it's sort of like this, and this is a stretch. There are rules, and the rules are specific. You go to a football game, there's a word choice, pass interference. And the word choice in the rule is obvious intent to impede. That's pretty generic. That's pretty ambiguous. But you have rules, not more than 11 players on a football team on the field at the same time. High school football is very common to have a punter kicker that's on the team to play another position. He stays on the field, they snap the ball, there's 12 officials, there's 12 players on the field. That's an illegal rule. It's a rule, it's factual, it's not interpreted. And that's the problem with some of these things here. We have a very nice facility that is going to upgrade the environment, the neighborhood. The gentleman was going to talk from across the street that has the nicest home in there. You're going to see one picture of a very nice, and it's also zoned differently on the maps here. He had to take his wife to the doctor. He waited here an hour and a half. Oh, they're back, excuse me. There we go, I'll be quiet about them. So I'm just going to kind of look at the topic sentence on some of the requirements that you have or planning has to bring this about. Compatible with plans and policies. To subdivide 2 or more lots, which is what this by definition is, and I don't think these definitions even make any difference for what we're here for. We're just trying to upgrade the situation. And these things like never intended to allow. Oh, come on. That's not a specific thing. So I'm going to jump to the next paragraph. That's not really important. Then it makes these inconsistent statements. The only time was when they had, I'm not sure if you even do variances. I just heard that variance term earlier, but the only time we allowed was when, and then no longer do we do those things. Made these subjective decision would appear to circumvent the intent. See if there's something else here. I don't want to put you to sleep like the last gentleman. So let me ask you these questions. Do you have a question for me that you would not think it's a good reason to put a new facility that's up to code to everywhere? And I can give you an example why it's up to code if I need to put it in here and approve it and get down the road. It's a very small thing. And
yeah, I think what the problem is, though, Jim, is that we've just set out guidelines for mobile homes compared to stick-built single-family homes, and this is a mobile home. No matter how you look at it, it's a mobile home. So it could be, and I agree that the neighborhood needs a facelift in a lot of different areas, but I don't think that's really what we can discuss. It's more this specific house itself.
Which is fine with me, and it's just one specific house we're talking about to put on this property. We're not talking about the neighborhood. We're not talking about rezoning the whole place. It's just one house. And that's what we're talking about, bringing in a nice home to put on here. So am I missing something here? Am I not understanding?
But it's going to be a manufactured house.
Okay, by definition. Okay, let me ask this question.
It's brought in.
It
wasn't built on site, or it wasn't stick built and brought on site.
Okay. But you could move this house 6 or 8 blocks to the northwest where you have an area designated, and it would be okay.
Correct.
Correct. And being in real estate, you're familiar with the term steering. Is that not correct? You're familiar with steering? illegal, forcing people to go places to accommodate specific needs and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think it's more that where they're zoned at.
Okay, well, let me ask you this.
We're not all in real estate.
Okay,
So
excuse me,
you keep saying we're in real estate.
Well, I thought
I'm not in
was
real estate. I'm a
okay.
garbage man.
All right.
So
I've got to talk to you. No,
Everybody else.
let me ask you this. We have Mark Street, okay? We have Mark Street.
Right.
Let's put a line right down the middle of Mark Street. And to the west, we have this man's property, and we want to put a manufactured home on it, the way it's zoned now. Now, there's this comment, keep saying about S1, S1. This home is an S1 home. It's a single resident home. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, etc. Now, as it exists now, I understand what we're talking about. But if we on the east side of this street, we have zoning to accommodate manufactured homes. Okay? Nothing else is different in the entire neighborhood except the word choice for the definition of the zoning for that property. In this location, everything stays the same. You pick up this house, take it across the street and sit it down. It complies now with everything except the definition on your zoning map, maybe. And I'd like to repeat that the city ordinances do not disallow what's going on. And I'd like to repeat that the city planning only offered this one solution to accommodate these needs. Are there any other questions? Or I'm not sure if I'm
Anybody have
making.
any questions? Nope. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, other public comment? Any other public? Yes, sir. We're going to have to go ahead and go to the timer because we're getting so late in the meeting. I don't know how to turn the timer on, so therefore I will use my own timer.
Be very brief. I don't have my style. I got to go. But
Sir?
I've got something
Sir?
here that I received.
State your name, please, sir.
Yeah.
State your name.
Name is Nicolas Arteaga.
Okay.
And I have 2 properties on Fulton Street, which is just behind this picture that you're showing here for some kind of a tower. And I'm just curious about it. I was
See
told
for the
to
wrong
come
one?
here.
I think you may be for the
Hang
wrong
on.
one.
But it's not this one.
We're not quite to that one
It's not
yet.
that one. Not yet. Almost. We're almost there.
Well, he doesn't say here what he said, just
Yeah,
come here.
we'll have you come back up whenever we get to that one,
I'll let you know when that case comes up. Okay?
okay?
Okay. It's all right.
All right, any other public comment about Mark Street? Okay, do you want to, sir? Yes, sir, would you state your name, please? Is this about Mark Street?
This environment here, and I don't understand. It takes all too much wasting time and things going on. I'm a citizen, I pay my taxes, and I got these 2 properties right next to that tower, and I want to talk about it.
Okay.
You find me by the police department, you can call me anytime you want. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
My name is Simon Soto, and I live right across the street from Mr. Wolfman, Odie Wolfman, the one who wants to put the remanufacturing house. And what I want to say is, I don't have no problem for him putting the remanufactured house there. He's my neighbor, and I know him for years. Of course, his dad and his mom, you know, they still got that little trailer there, which she wants to upgrade it, you know. But that's all I want to say, because I don't have no problem with him putting
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Marilyn Sneed. This ordinance was passed in 2000 that all of a sudden made this house, mobile home, it was a mobile home by definition back then, built in 1959, which is still currently on that lot, occupied by a man who has lived there since 1960. All of a sudden, in 2000, it became non-conforming. Now, I'm just a private citizen. I researched and researched and researched and tried to find documentation as to why. I'm sure it's there, but I couldn't find it. Why planning was helpful, they weren't that helpful in trying to help us understand this. Okay, so all of a sudden, it's non-conforming or non-complying. Times have changed. That was done in 2000. This is now, 2017. Manufactured homes are under federal guidance, built to HUD standards, and they are, I hate to say it, a wave of the future, which I know terrifies a lot of people. That's what you're afraid of. Oh my God, we're going to approve it on this lot. That means everybody's going to put one. And before we know it, the whole town will be mobile homes or manufactured homes. That's really not the case. It is an affordable option. And this town is in desperate need of affordable options. You drive around that neighborhood, it is distressed. These are poor, hardworking people who are trying to better their life, which is what this man is trying to do. He is trying to better his life, his safety. You can't tell me a 1959 mobile home is very safe. The one that he is trying to put there meets federal standards. And you can't argue, and I know planning will, that those standards, oh my God, they're not as good as our ones that we build from the site. Don't tell us that. That is not true, and we can prove it if we have to. Now, you as a commission have a way to grant variances, special permits, but everywhere we turn, it's like, oh God, we can't do that. That's not allowed. I know you can. That is your job. I've seen it done today. So there has to be a way to, again, yes, it's granted RS. Yes, you may be opening the door to other people coming in wanting to put in modern manufactured homes, but you still have the power to approve it or not based on the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. I know you made reference to the recent ordinance that you passed or something that had to do with the modular homes. And that's not a bad one, because you can see if you're living in a neighborhood, you're telling me to hurry up, but you let these other people talk.
We just had to, a while ago, I said we were having to put a 3-minute
I know,
limit on it.
but, and see, now I've lost my chain of thought. But the modular home deal was good. You could do the similar thing for something like this, to prevent somebody putting in a manufactured home in the Bluffs, God forbid.
I see, we see what you're saying, and I think that's what the decision needs to be made off of. There's a
Yes.
mobile home there. Will we let it be replaced by a better mobile home since it's still in a single-family lot? I mean, I think that's the big issue. So we do understand what you're saying, and we do know that it's better than what you've got, and it's safer than what he has.
Yes, and
Okay.
it would be a big improvement to that neighborhood. You should drive it sometime. There
I
are
have.
no curbs. The city has, I hate to say ignored it, but you're really not paying much attention to it.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right. So Rebecca, am I correct in that what I just said? Is that there's already a mobile home there on a single-family lot?
Correct.
Okay, and so now we're trying, or 2 single-family lots, so we're trying to decide do we allow them to replace that mobile home with another mobile home?
No. put another mobile home on there.
Oh, I
They're
thought they
wanting
were
to put a
replacing it.
manufactured house on there.
Okay, a
Big,
matter-
big
okay.
difference.
Okay, but in the
Big
well, is it?
Yeah,
is it a
it is.
manufactured house or a mobile home?
Yes, it's
Yes.
it's a manufactured home.
Okay, so we're saying that we're just replacing what we've got with a better one, with a
you go.
better home,
Okay.
okay?
Which
So-
has not been allowed in that zoning since 1980.
Okay.
Right.
But that one was put in 1959, I guess, or something. It was been there since 1959. This is a hard deal. I mean, it really is, because you can see the purpose from the owner is that they are just trying to make it better. And that area is a very distressed area. So we can see all of that. It's just whether or not we go against we make an exception. I mean, that's what it boils down to, right? Mr. Torres, did you want to talk?
Al Torres, building official. I did want to point out, I don't want to get too much into this construction standards of a manufactured home and a mobile home compared to a stick-built home, but basically the standards are different. As she said, manufactured homes are built to HUD standards. They're not built to the residential building code, which is a stick-built home or a modular home would be. One of the big differences is that a manufactured home and or a mobile home, the only difference between a manufactured home and a mobile home is that a manufactured home, HUD started regulating them after 1976. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same thing. You can't find mobile homes anymore because after 1976, HUD started regulating all of these, and they're now manufactured homes. Manufactured homes don't have to be placed on a permanent foundation. They set them on blocks, tie them down, anchor them down with a cable, and put a skirt around it. So that's one of the big differences.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. One more time, 3 minutes.
Basic outline of what Mr. Torres, which is a nice guy, stated, that's 100% faulty reasoning, and that's not factual. That might have been current in 2000. Part of the things people talk about are materials are made out of. Things such as the tornadoes are going to blow them away and all that business. Florida had 4 hurricanes, and the data indicates that these manufactured homes tolerated the weather as good as the stick-built homes. We're in a Tier 1 area, not a hurricane area. People worry about those hurricanes and things. The fabrication of the materials and the quality of the materials meet or exceed what San Angelo requires. It's just a different flavor. Some of the things that are in the ordinances about the differences have to do with roof structure to support heavy, wet snow or high winds. We're not in a high wind area.
Right.
And so the information you just received from Mr. Torres, I know I don't need it now, but I can provide you data 100% factual that exceeds the comments the gentleman just talked about. And there are so many other examples, but it's not factual. The matter of fact, the housing we're talking about exceeds the specs that are on those rental properties across the alley. I'll sit down and get out of the way. Thank you.
All right. I think we've.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Russell with SKG. Manufactured residences can be put on a permanent foundation and be lended on. So there is a way, maybe if you need to, if you do approve it, put the caveat that it's on a permanent foundation.
Thank you.
Yeah, can't do that.
We can't say that.
And I just want to remind you that we're not suggesting that the construction standards are a
Or less
factor
than.
here. It's city
Right.
council has said these type of homes should only be in certain areas.
Okay.
The question before you is this an area where you want to allow it?
Okay. All right. Okay. Do y'all have any questions?
Again, if we deny this, they can still take this before city council and they can appeal this case and pull it off the consent agenda and they can.
Correct. Yours is only a recommendation. This will go to city council either way, with your recommendation either for or against.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. We need to move along.
This really is a tough situation because on one side of me, I would really like to see this gentleman be able to do this. But driving around through the neighborhood, and I do drive through that neighborhood regularly, I can't support it. So, but I would like to see it go before council.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny.
I'll second it.
Okay, so Joe made the motion, Mark seconded the motion to deny it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Two opposed.
Okay, so 4-2, Terry and Sammy. Whoops. It was denied. Okay, Johnson Street Church of Christ, Z 1705, public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of zone change from the single-family residential zoning district to the office commercial zoning district for property located at 1920 Johnson Street, Junior, located approximately 190 feet south of the intersection of South Johnson Street and Venter Avenue, more specifically being the Delmore Place Annex subdivision, Lot 7 and 8 and 9, City of San Angelo, Texas.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, Jeff Fisher, Senior Planner. This is a zone change request for the Johnson Church of Christ. It's on 0.431 acres at the southeast corner of South Johnson Street and Venter Avenue. Lane Carter's District, SMD number 5, in the ASU College Hills neighborhood. The future land use is campus institutional. It's surrounded by Angelo State University on all sides. And the zoning currently is single-family residential, RS1. The applicant's proposing to change the zoning to office commercial, CO, to allow a religious institution which provides faith-based services to Angelo State University students, Rams for Christ. These are the photos of the surrounding area. Looking west, you've got Angelo State University campus. Looking north as well, the Baptist Center is directly north of the Rams for Christ. Looking south down Johnson as well, again, Angelo State all around it. This is east at the subject property. So what they're planning to do is expand the existing footprint of the current building. As you know, before 2000, churches and schools were allowed as of right in the RS1 zone. So a lot of these uses, including the Johnson Church of Christ building, has been there since the 60s. And from the synopsis the applicant gave us, used to provide actually a class, Bible study class at ASU. Since 2000, that right was taken away. One of the cases we'll get to later today is regarding schools possibly going back in the RS1 zoning. So churches right now are not allowed. The office commercial zone change request would allow a religious institution by right in this area. So that would essentially legalize their expansion. The existing footprint, of course, has been grandfathered in. This is the rear of the building right now. There's 5 parking spaces currently operational, although the applicant, who's here for questions later, has indicated that a lot of the students will park on the adjacent lot at Angelo State and walk across to the building. And this is the parking lot immediately south of the 5 existing spaces. Angelo State University is currently going through an expansion. They've got an existing building, or a new building that will be going up here as well. So the property survey that the applicant has provided dictates some of the future expansion areas on the property. So the yellow is the existing building. They want to propose an addition here, as I understand, would just give the students more space to conjugate, as well as some coffee facilities, etc. This is a minor addition at the front here. There will be an outdoor patio they've shown along the south end of the property. Staff rationale is to recommend approval of the zone change request based on the following. Number 1, the comprehensive plan designates this area campus institutional, so that support colleges and universities, as well as other similar institutions. Again, Rams for Christ serves the ASU community already and therefore appears to be compatible with the comprehensive plan policy in this regard. Number 2, we believe it's consistent with the zoning ordinance. The development will comply with all of the provisions in the zoning ordinance. There are 2 exceptions to this, and the applicant has applied for a variance, which will go in early June. The parking standard for a religious institution would require 14 spaces based on the current gross floor area of the building. As mentioned, there's only 5 directly on the site, so they will need to get a variance. That would be a separate matter through the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The logic there, of course, is that most of the students are coming from ASU, and so they'll be making that case to the ZBA later on. The second variance request, because, again, even though it's a campus and a religious institution, based on the way the zoning was written previously, requires a privacy fence surrounding the north, east, and south property lines. So even though, again, the uses never really fit RS1, they will need to do that too. Again, that's through the ZBA. We believe it's compatible with the surrounding area. As mentioned, Rams for Christ serves the adjacent ASU campus community. The changed conditions, the current zoning of RS1 is no longer really appropriate for this area, given that it's a university campus and was never developed as single-family housing. The CO zoning would recognize the existing religious institution and allow them to expand on the property. No effects on the natural environment, given the site's already been paved. 6, there is a community need. Again, they serve the existing community. And finally, no change in anticipated development patterns. There's sidewalks along Johnson and internal crosswalks and trails, so the students from ASU would have easy access through that parking lot direct to the building, which they now use that sidewalk as well. Public notification, we sent out 4 notices. The ASU is so big, so there was only 2 other property owners there. We haven't received any responses in favor or against. Staff recommendation is to approve the zone change from the single-family residential RS1 zoning district to the office commercial zoning district. Any questions or comments?
Nope.
Good morning, Russell with SKG. I think this should be a very easy one to continue to do God's work on land He created. So be happy to answer any questions.
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you. All right, any more public comment? All right, there being none.
I'll move to approve as stated.
Okay, Mark made the motion. Joe seconded the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 6-0. Yay. Okay, next one, conditional uses. The Planning Commission has final authority for approval. Appeals may be directed to the City Council. CU 17-03 Star Towers. Public hearing and consideration request for approval of a conditional use to allow for telecommunication facility in the general commercial, heavy commercial zoning district for a property located at 1524 South Bell Street, generally located along the east side of South Bell Street between Era and Paint Rock Road, more specifically being .5184 acres in the H. Olkers Survey Number 165, Abstract 1757, Tom Green County, Texas.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Christina Heredia. I'm a planner with the City of San Angelo, for the record. I am presenting to you today the conditional use for 1703 Star Towers. It is for a cellular tower to be built on a site along South Bell. The location is on the northeast corner of South Bell and Paint Rock Road. It's in single-member District 3 in the Bel Air neighborhood. This is the future land use map, and as it's showing, it is in a neighborhood center with residential surrounding. The zone on it right now is currently general to heavy commercial, and a cell tower isn't allowed use on the in that zoning designation. As you can see right here in this red dot, that is where the location of the cell tower will be. Here's some photos of this site. This is facing South Bell. The proposed cell tower will be back here behind the storage centers. This is, the first one is the north, if you look up South Bell, and then the second picture is if you look south down South Bell, and it is as you can see, the tower will be located in a commercial area. And this is across the street if you look west. So here is a site plan of the proposed location. This circle that you see here is a 100-foot buffer, which is required to have a cell tower away from a residential district. And as you can see, the residence is located further out than the 100-foot buffer. So we are recommending approval, and our rationale. The first one is that it will have a limited impact because it's going to be a monopole design, and it will be more than 100 feet away from residentials. It is compatible with the zoning district and compatible with the zoning ordinance. We don't anticipate any environmental effects. We do believe that there is a community need for this, as it will address increased local demand for cellular communication. And we also believe it is compatible with development along South Bell. We sent out 16 notifications, and as of now, we have received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. So we are recommending approval of the conditional use to allow for the cellular tower on the CGCH zoning district, subject to 4 conditions of approval. And the first one being that it is that there's only one, and that it maintains a 100-foot distance. That the second is that it complies with Section 424 of our zoning ordinance. The third is that we get final latitude and longitudinal coordinates, and the fourth is that it is only a slimline monopole. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Could you go back to the picture of the ones that you sent out? That circle.
The circle.
The circle
Oh, the circle one, yeah,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
That one.
Okay. So show me on that exactly where the pole would be
It's going to be right in this area.
in that area?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ma'am. Public comment, sir? Good deal. If you'll state your name, please, sir?
Nicolas Arteaga, and I apologize for my behavior. I guess I got a little too in a hurry. But anyway, I happen to own two properties right behind where you're showing on this piece of paper here, the tower. And I have no exit on the end of my property. There's two lots. Lot number 2.
We pull up a map,
Number 2 here,
an aerial map that might help us.
Now, there used to be an alley in the back of my properties which runs to Era Street. And here just recently, I wanted to get back there and see what was going on. And Era Street.
Stay in the mic, please, sir. Use the mic so we can hear you.
I thought I was sounding a little too loud.
No, no.
Okay. Anyway, the alley that supposedly goes to Era Street, it's blocked. That big neighborhood store or supermarket that they built there, they put a fence. For anyone to go into through that alley, you have to drive through the neighborhood, that big store they put on that corner, and drive behind. And I tried to do that, so I had to go behind the buildings, back around to get to my property. So you know what I'm saying? My number 2's here, which are 2 lots and 2 houses there, I had to forgive. There's no exit onto the alley. It's blocked. I didn't know why. Nobody asked me. But anyway, now this tower, and what kind of a tower is it? What shape will it have? What is it? One of you know?
Yes, sir.
The details about the building? How
Yes,
it's
sir. Rebecca will show you. It's a monopole, so it's just one pole, and then she'll tell you as far as its size.
Radius size.
Diameter.
It's just a pole, what it is.
Yeah,
right?
we don't know at this point the size of the base. It could be typically
It's just
10
a
feet
round
across.
post, what it's going to be, right? Is that I see the picture there?
Yes, sir. I believe the gentleman's here that, and he probably can tell us more about it.
Okay, come on.
Yeah. You'll go ahead and state your name?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Vince Hebring, representing the applicant and the owner on this. I've got a brief PowerPoint presentation, and I will be happy to answer this gentleman's question. Christina can get it rolling for me. You may recognize this. This came before you a couple of months ago. This is an actual change in location from where you see on this aerial above in the yellow thumbtack. Now it's back here within that storage area, heavy commercial. What you don't see there is where I have a location text for that new Dollar General site, which is next to it as well. We're zone heavy commercial, CG, CH, and it's commercial zone on all 4 sides of us. There is some residential to the east, however, that's over 100 feet, as Christina said. This is a pretty hard commercial corner with the washateria, storage, the Stripes location. So we felt this was a better location based on the previous site because of the screened area, and then the Dollar General store being developed right next to it. That does comply with all code requirements, the property setbacks and the height from that standpoint. And as you see that tin shed back in there, it's going to be located back in that corner. That'll be removed. You can see Dollar General there too. This is the view to the east for that residential property, so you can see it's very well screened from fencing, trees, and those things. Again, the commercial site. Very important to show you, this is for T-Mobile, and this site is co-locatable, so other carriers can come put their equipment and antennas on it. But this is a two-pronged situation for T-Mobile. We all carry smartphones now, and it's capacity that they're looking for. You can see these green-looking Doppler map things where their existing sites are. Where the green area is, they do have in-kitchen, in-building coverage. Strategically, if we could get in the center of those to provide a new site, that would be great, but that's all residential. So you can see where the arrow is, where we're proposing to go helps. Everybody has generally in-car coverage, walking around driving. This is an in-building coverage problem that will create this effect here. So everybody will have this in-building coverage within this neighborhood, which is 4,000 rooftops as well. It also offloads that capacity problem from the smartphones and the multiple applications that are running all the time on a stationary basis. And the question for you was how big the monopole would be? It's a 100-foot monopole, so it should be about 3 foot in circumference, about that. It's not going to be much bigger, maybe 40 at the most, but we want to make sure that they're manufactured by these people that will engineer the structure and the foundation and over-engineer these to make sure that they're stable to withstand some of the local storms and wind codes that you have. So it'd be about a little bit over 3 feet.
Reach around it.
Yeah, you won't be able to reach around it yourself, no. And do you have any other questions for me, or?
Any other questions? No, sir.
If memory serves, we went through this process on a different site. It went to the city council, and I believe it was denied because of. So the city council's directive, I thought, was to try to find another pole that was in use by other service providers that you guys could maybe use. Or does that sound correct, or?
I think that's not entirely right. That was one option.
Okay.
I think the council did also mention perhaps finding another location within that general vicinity that met their needs, but away from those complaining neighbors.
Got it. Okay.
I want to make just one point while I'm here. I understand now the circumference of these poles and everything, whatever. But why is the alley block behind that neighborhood commercial building that is on Era Street and Bell Street? It's blocked completely. And my two lots, my two houses that I have, which are number 2 on this picture, they go directly into that area where you all more or less plan on putting that.
They can get you the name of someone maybe to check with the city.
Can I
We don't
check?
really,
And
we don't do that.
Who had the permission or the authority to block the alley?
Yeah, that we don't know. We do not know the answer to that.
It appears from the map that we're looking at that there's not actually an alley, even though there may be an alley that's used. This is not showing a separate legal alley, I guess you'd call it. But yeah,
I had those properties for ages, and 2 residential properties there, and we used to drive through there.
Yes, sir.
But no more because somebody just blocked that. Anyway,
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Come on up and state your name, please.
My name is Danny Simmons. I'm the property owner at the laundromat. If you could, can you turn it to the picture of the actual, the picture I think it's the next one, or the next one. It's the picture where the Dollar General,
Okay, sorry, let me get that for you.
I've had the property now for probably 9 years. This is my property right here. Where's the? The one. The aerial. The aerial, yes. That.
There you go.
Okay. This is my property line here, and I'm aware of what's going on in this area here, or I have been in the past. There used to be horses in this area. I'm not sure who owned them. When I sprayed for weeds along this line, I always try to be careful. To my knowledge, there has never been any kind of alley, so that's why I'm not really understanding what he's referring to. I know people before they built the Dollar General, people used to drive, as you can see, there's a big truck there. There used to be two big trucks that used to park there. And people did have access to this area here. I've seen people drive through, excuse me, on these lots back here. But as far as an alley, I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Okay.
When the Dollar General was built, that probably blocked that access to this property here.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, any more public comment? Okay, there being none, let's have a motion.
I'll
Move to approve it.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, Mark made the motion, Joe seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 6-0. Moving right along. Oh, did Travis make the motion? I didn't even hear you. You're over here all by yourself.
I am. I'm on an island.
Right-of-way vacations and abandonment. City Council has final authority for approval of the vacation and abandoning of public right-of-way, street right-of-way vacation and abandonment of North Harrison Street, City of San Angelo. Public hearing and consideration of a request for approval of the should be vacating and abandonment of the approximate .416 acres, 18,107 square feet segment of North Harrison Street, public street right-of-way, generally located between Woodlawn Drive and Forest Park Avenue, approximately 282 feet in length, and being in Volume 1, page 126 through 134, official plat records of Tom Green County, Texas.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to get clarification because there was some confusion. For the previous motion, we had a motion by Commissioner Travis Stribling and then seconded by Joe Spano?
Correct. Correct.
Got it.
I just wanted to make sure that it was correct. I wasn't trying to be a stickler. I just wanted to make sure that you guys had the correct.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were.
Okay, go ahead. So,
Christina Radio with the Planning Department. I'm here to talk about the North Harrison Street abandonment. It's approximately .416 acres. It is a strip of North Harrison that is located between Woodlawn Drive and Forest Park Avenue. It's in single-member District 3 and Angelo Heights neighborhood. So this is the zoning map. It is RS1 zoning, and the park is in the middle of it, and then the red hash is the street, the section of North Harrison that we're talking about today. So this is a photo if you're standing on Woodlawn Drive and you look down, so you can look south on the proposed street abandonment. And here's the opposite side. So this is looking on Forest Park, looking up. We are recommending approval, and our rationale is threefold. The first is that it is underutilized as a passage. Most people traversing north-south use Van Buren. They don't use North Harrison. So as of such, we do not think it will adversely affect traffic conditions. And thirdly, North Harrison Street is not shown as a street that will have improvements on our master thoroughfare plan. We mailed out 157 notices, and as of yet, I have received none in favor and none in opposition. So we are recommending approval of the abandonment of that section of North Harrison Street, subject to 2 conditions of approval. And if you want, I can read those into the record. Okay.
Great. Any questions?
So this will just be more of the park continued? Good.
right, any public comment? All right, there being none, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept, please.
Terry made the
Second.
motion. Travis seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 6-0, approved. Text amendments. Public hearing and consideration of a text amendment to Chapter 12, Exhibit A zoning ordinance, Article 3, to amend Section 310 to designate the zoning districts where schools may be permitted, to amend 314G exceptions to include parochial schools under the classification of schools, to amend Section 314.1 schools, to amend the description of schools, to create a new specific use standards section and requirements for vehicle stacking, lighting, sidewalks, building design, signage, and landscaping, and to amend Article 8, Section 511H, vehicle stacking areas to require stacking areas in certain circumstances.
That may take longer than my presentation will, but
Let's hope so.
you saw this, so I'm not going to go through all of this. This is basically the same thing we presented to you last time, but at that time, it was just a discussion item. Wanted to give you a little more time than normal to kind of look at it and think through it. So I will answer any questions if you have them. Basically, let me just give you the overview, is that this will allow schools in most zoning districts, whereas currently that's not the case, but with some additional standards placed. What we've been doing is each time a school wants to expand or build a new building, they have to come in with a conditional use or an expansion of a non-conforming use or a plan development. This will greatly simplify that process.
Great. Any questions for John?
The one note that, as you may recall, we made a distinction between elementary schools that are usually more low impact and they're allowed in more areas versus like a high school that still is limited to fewer districts.
Let me ask, I know, when you say that, I mean, I get it, right? The students, they're not driving to school and all that, but if there's several hundred kids going there, I mean, do you guys consider the parental traffic?
We do. Again, there are some standards in there for queuing spaces and some street standards that will apply, if it were a new school being built. In any case, this is just from the zoning standpoint of, again, most elementary schools are built in or right next to residential neighborhoods. And the way it used to be in our zoning ordinance, those were allowed. Then we basically prohibited them in residential zoning, so almost every elementary school in town is now an illegal non-conforming or a legal non-conforming use. And that has created some problems every time, if the school district just wants to add a bathroom at the tennis courts or something like that, it has created more hassle than we think is necessary. And so we think this simplifies it, but still has some protections in there where we get to review things like parking and queuing lanes and things like lighting and sidewalks and other.
Any other questions? Okay. There being none, do we have a motion?
Made to approve.
We'll need to do a public hearing as well.
Okay, so we don't need to make a motion?
No, you
We can go
do
ahead.
need to make it, well, you can make the motion, but I just wanted to make sure you opened it up to the public.
Oh, okay. Any public comment? I think everybody's will to, the last ones here look like they're just tired.
So I'll move
Okay.
to approve.
Mark made the motion. Sammy seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, 6-0. Public hearing and consideration of a text amendment on Chapter 12, Exhibit A zoning ordinance, Article 5, General Development Standards, Section 511E, off-street parking standards to allow the planning director to review and approve alternate parking standards.
This is, as we've looked at some previous developments in the past few months, right now what our ordinance allows is if two uses want to share the same parking, normally that's not allowed, but the ordinance currently gives us the ability to say, yeah, if one is a shopping center and the other is a church or a movie theater or something that they don't have the same peak times for traffic, they can actually share the same space and count that one parking space for two different uses. We currently have that flexibility. What we don't have is a flexibility to allow a business to use off-site parking or to actually reduce the parking. This would allow us additional flexibility administratively. They can always seek a variance from the Board of Adjustment, but this allows an administrative approval process where I can approve that if they make the case for either shared parking, off-site parking, or a reduction in the number of parking spaces. If if staff does not agree with their request, they still have the ability to go to the Board of Adjustment. This just gives them one other option that in many cases would simplify it and not require them to go through that zoning variance process.
Questions for John?
Has this been a recent issue that has come up?
Well, it's been something that's been on our radar for addressing. Honestly, one of the things that came up was the zoning case for the church at the campus, on the campus. They're not going to have enough parking, and so their only option at this point is to seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This will allow them to address that concern. This was in the works before that, so I wouldn't say that prompted this, but it did sort of prompt us to bring it now versus we had planned to bring it in a couple of months.
Any other questions? Any public comment? There being none, do I have a motion? Terry made the motion.
I'll second it.
Sorry,
Who seconded it down there? Mark seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, 6-0. It is approved. Director's report while you're standing there.
The only thing I would add is those two text amendments are not going to council on our regular cycle. Since we have so many cases, as you saw today, took a lot of time, we're going to split those out and go a meeting sooner just to help make it where council doesn't have so many cases on one agenda. But in case any public is listening or watching, they'll know that these items won't be on that same schedule.
Great. All right. So do you have anything else?
Nope, that was
That's
it.
it.
Thank you.
All right. So future meetings, the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is tentatively scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Monday, June the 19th, here in the council chambers. Nothing else happening. It is 11:46. Do I have a motion to
Yes,
adjourn?
ma'am.
Terry made the motion.
Second.
Mark seconded. All in favor say aye. No one will say nay to that one. So 6-0. Thank you.